Marvel, Spider-Man? No, I'm Superman. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1, Hulk's identity was stolen? On a rural road leading to a small frontier town in New York City, a vintage Chevrolet slowly drove along. Melodic country music drifted from the half-open car window, filling the air as the car passed along the narrow, country road. A middle-aged couple sat in the front seat. The man leisurely drove, his fingers on the steering wheel, tapping the beat to the music blaring from the car radio. The woman in the passenger seat leaned back, her gaze quietly admiring the scenery passing by. At this moment, everything seemed harmonious and peaceful, like a family on a picnic. As a beautiful country song gradually faded to a close, a dynamic prelude suddenly blared from the speakers. Hey, what's the matter with your head? Yet, following the prelude, a dynamic rock track blared, instantly brightening the previously quiet and peaceful car interior. Even the middle-aged man driving the car danced a little louder to the music. Ben, turn the music down. Don't wake Peter. While the upbeat song was beautiful and even added to the cheerful atmosphere, the dynamic beat felt a bit out of place in the otherwise quiet car. Especially since there was a teenager dozing off in the back seat. Thank you, Aunt May, but I'm awake already. Just as Ben Parker was about to follow his wife's instructions and turn down the music, a languid voice echoed from behind them, as if they hadn't fully woken up yet. Good to wake up. We're almost at our destination. Ignoring his wife's somewhat angry glare, Ben Parker spoke slowly without turning his head. Peter Parker, his mind forcibly rebooted by the music, could only softly respond, then shook his dizzy head. While music certainly helps with sleep, there are different types. This classic track by Redbones is a supreme musical enjoyment for those in this world. However, for him, who had traveled from another world, a different, unforgettable image slowly emerged in his mind. A certain movie series from his previous life had left him with a completely different impression of this music. Even though he had just been asleep, when he heard the prelude to the music, a strange image involuntarily emerged in his mind. A fool with a godlike body, comparable to a mortal, with a Walkman strapped to his waist, was moving his somewhat portly body to the dynamic music, forcing him to wake up. Moreover, the world he'd traveled to was exactly the same world that the fool had inhabited. The music continued, and to temporarily forget the strange image in his mind, Peter Parker could only find a topic to talk about, to stop his thoughts from being affected by the music. Uncle Ben, when can we get a new car? This one's probably older than me. The drive should have only taken 2 or 3 hours, but this aging car had taken almost an entire morning. Anyone would probably want to buy a new car. What, you don't like me, old buddy? I wonder who is the guy who missed the school bus and had to rely on me and this old buddy to help him get to school, Uncle Ben replied jokingly. Uncle Ben, I've been very punctual these past few months. Peter wondered what the guy's behavior before the time travel had to do with his current self. Yes, you've become more punctual in recent months, but you've also gotten into more trouble. You even dared to steal from Oscorp, and were caught red-handed. If you weren't underage, and because of your parents, you'd probably still be incarcerated in the NYPD. The thought of this infuriated Ben Parker, and even now, his expression remained grave. Uncle Ben, I'm sorry to have worried you, but I did it for a reason. Gazing at Uncle Ben's sullen face through the rearview mirror, Parker could only softly explain. After all, having just traveled to this world and become Spider-Man, Peter Parker naturally couldn't resist the allure of Spider-Man. It's understandable that he'd do something rather outrageous. Reason? Are you investigating your parents? It was clear that the two of them had different interpretations of Peter's reason. Enough, Ben, we're not here to argue today. Before Ben could continue, Aunt May finally spoke up, interrupting their unpleasant conversation. I'm sorry, Peter, I shouldn't have said that. Ben, interrupted by Aunt May, realized his words might have hurt Peter. But what happened to your parents is irreversible. You can't give up your future because of them. You still have endless possibilities. I understand, Uncle Ben. Aunt May, you don't have to worry about me. Peter's tone seemed remarkably calm now. This kid, seeing Peter's unusual calmness, the Parkers in the front seat exchanged glances, a hint of worry in their eyes. Come and get your love, the music continued, and gradually, a quiet atmosphere settled over the car. Peter's thoughts drifted back to the moment he had infiltrated Oscorp alone a few days earlier. Eager to gain power, he couldn't wait for the normal fate of visiting the Osborn Biological Laboratory and being bitten by the spider destined to become Spider-Man. After careful preparation, he secretly infiltrated Oscorp and, with a narrow escape, entered the laboratory containing the genetically modified spider. Even though the alarm had been triggered upon entering, Peter had managed to have a genetically modified spider bite him on the arm before security arrived. Therefore, even though he was eventually apprehended and taken to the police station, it still seemed like his goal had been achieved. However, after Uncle Ben took him home from the police station, and several days had passed, he still hadn't awakened his Spider-Man abilities. Maybe the spider that bit me wasn't right. Next time, I'll make every spider bite me once. Having failed to awaken his Spider-Man abilities, Peter could only blame the spider that bit him for his failure. He prepared to infiltrate Oscorp once more. At the same moment, the cheerful music in the car suddenly stopped. Then the radio broadcast the announcer's voice came over. Breaking news. This morning, a car accident occurred on the Queensboro Bridge in New York City. A family car was rear-ended by a truck and careened off the bridge. Fortunately, just as the car was about to fall, a mysterious figure in a tights and a mask appeared, wrapped the car in a special spider silk, and pulled it back onto the bridge. Fortunately, only a few people were injured, and no one died. According to the police representative at the scene, Officer George Stacy, there was no human factor in the accident. Please stay tuned for further reports. The news interruption ended, and Peter, at this moment, had only one thought. Did someone steal my identity as Little Hulk? P.S. New author, new book, please add to favorites, monthly votes, and recommendation votes. If you have the investment space, please invest. Thanks everyone. New author, new book, please add to favorites. Chapter 2: The Spaceship in the Basement. Oh my goodness, I hope they were okay. The compassionate Parkers expressed their concern for the incident reported on the news and prayed for their safe escape. Meanwhile, Peter Parker, in the back seat of the car, felt as if he'd been smacked in the head with a savage punch. He cared nothing for the casualties of the sudden accident. His mind resonated with the words, "A mysterious figure saved the day with webs." Peter had no idea that, while he was still planning his next step toward acquiring Spider-Man's powers, someone had already successfully awakened his extraordinary abilities. Even at this very moment, they displayed their immense powers, announcing the birth of Spider-Man to the world. There was no doubt that from today on, Spider-Man's name would become a household name across New York City, and indeed the world. And none of this had anything to do with Peter Parker. In that moment, Peter felt like a wealthy heir poised to inherit billions, only to discover, at the crucial moment, that he wasn't his biological son. Not only was his entire fortune about to be destroyed, but it was all gone. He was even forced to be kicked out of his home and beg on the streets. Such a huge loss was hard for almost anyone to accept. Even after the Parkers arrived at their destination, Peter still couldn't fully accept the devastating news. "Peter, we're here." Ben Parker didn't notice the intense sense of loss Peter was feeling. Pulling the car in front of a farm, he called to Peter in the back seat and opened the door. Peter, still lost in his despair, finally came to his senses, gathered his composure, and they both got out of the car. Temporarily forgetting his impossibility of becoming Spider-Man, Peter gazed at the vast farm before him. While it looked somewhat desolate, with weeds nearly a meter high growing on the once flat ground, it also held a unique beauty. Every time a breeze blew, it rippled like the ocean, a cascade of emerald green waves. Well, even if I can't be Spider-Man, at least I can be a farmer. Who wouldn't want to be the handsome Spider-Man? Parker Farm is the only property this boy's parents left him. Peter felt a little strange as he recalled memories of the farm. He didn't recall seeing farms like this in Spider-Man movies. It's been a whole year since I last came here, and it's become so desolate. Looks like we'll have a lot of work to do these days. Looking at the overgrown farm before him, Ben Parker couldn't help but rub his now weakened back. Aunt May rolled her eyes at Ben Parker's complaints, then said to Peter, "Peter, let's go in first." Ben smiled, shook his head, and slowly followed him into the farm. This farm is quite large. Even in the suburbs, such a large area should be worth a lot of money. Who said Peter Parker was a poor kid? This is definitely a future farmer. Entering the farm, Peter could only more clearly grasp its enormity. Just walking from the entrance to the house took quite a while. A few simple wooden houses stood on the farm. A full year had passed since their last visit. The house, which had been tidied a year ago, was now covered in a thick layer of dust again. Uncle Ben pointed to a small wooden house at the far end and said to Peter, "Peter, May and I will take care of the other rooms, and you'll take care of the warehouse. Is that okay?" Peter didn't answer, but simply walked towards the wooden house. "Ben, we can do these things. Why let Peter do them?" Aunt May looked at Peter as he left, her eyes full of care. Uncle Ben smiled and replied, "May, he's grown up. It's time for him to become an independent man. In my opinion, he's always a child." Meanwhile, Peter had already arrived at the small warehouse. It was just a warehouse, so he had no complaints. However, as he entered the warehouse and saw the many useless items piled up inside, covered in a thick layer of dust, he felt a little frustrated. "This is going to take me all afternoon to clean it up. I haven't even had lunch yet," Peter couldn't help but roar inwardly. In the end, he could only silently begin to sort through the clutter. Thankfully, Uncle Ben wasn't an evil capitalist. An hour later, he called Peter over for lunch, which Aunt May had prepared. However, afterward, Peter needed to return to tidy up the warehouse. So, Peter spent almost the entire afternoon cleaning and sorting out the unused materials and equipment, sorting and arranging them. Gradually, the once messy warehouse became neatly organized. As he sorted, his memories of the farm, including the warehouse, gradually became clearer. He remembered how this body's parents had warned him not to play here when he was little. Now, it seemed as if there was some secret hidden here. Could there be a hidden biology lab here? Considering the fact that this body's parents were genetic scientists, Peter felt the possibility of a hidden biology lab. Hey, even if there really is a lab, what use would it have to me right now? Would I use it to conduct genetic modification experiments on myself? If I can't be Spider-Man, I'd try being Fly-Man or Cockroach Man. Peter shook his head, casting aside these unrealistic thoughts and continuing to organize the warehouse. Peter plopped down on the floor. "Finally, I'm done. I'm so exhausted." After spending nearly the entire afternoon, Peter was almost done with the warehouse. Only a pile of metal objects of unknown purpose remained in the corner. Wow, they're so heavy. Lifting the metal objects one by one, Peter felt his back nearly breaking from the strain. Huh? This is a basement. After moving the unused metal objects away, Peter noticed something unusual. Apparently, due to years of neglect and the sheer weight of the metal objects, the wooden floor beneath had crumbled, revealing a hole. Peter couldn't help but lie on the floor, peering through the hole. He could vaguely see a staircase leading to a deeper level, but it was pitch black, and he couldn't make out anything. What a mysterious basement. Could it be a place left behind by my parents? Peter couldn't help but feel curious. After all, this body's parents were murdered because of their scientific research. Never mind, let's go down and take a look. Peter didn't believe this suddenly appeared basement could pose any danger to him. After all, this wasn't a tomb raiding operation. There wouldn't be so many traps and dangers. Immediately, Peter found a flashlight and used the hammer to enlarge the hole until it was large enough for him to descend. Then he walked down carefully. Descending the stairs, Peter soon touched solid ground. Then, relying on the flashlight's light, he continued to slowly burrow deeper. What's that? A dinosaur egg? As Peter cautiously went deeper, he discovered that at the end of the basement, there was no laboratory, but rather an oval-shaped giant egg. However, as he got closer, he finally confirmed it. No, this isn't an egg. It looks like a spaceship. Chapter 3 Superman script loading. A farm, a basement, and an alien spaceship, all these familiar things merged, forming a single image in Peter's mind. A sky blue bodysuit outlined a flawless figure, the S symbol on the chest symbolizing hope. Standing tall, he gazed down upon everything. The red cape fluttered in the wind. Like a god, he was so powerful that it made one tremble. So, I can't be. At that moment, though it was only a guess, Peter's heart raced. The tension was even greater than when he'd last infiltrated Osborn Industries and let a genetically mutated spider bite him. After all, this was Superman. Spider-Man's seemingly formidable strength was nothing compared to Superman's. Superman crushing Spider-Man would be as easy as a human crushing a spider. If he could gain Superman's powers, even if it wasn't the various unpredictable forms depicted in the comics, simply normal Superman would be enough to grant him terrifying power. From then on, he would no longer have to worry about the perils that plagued the Marvel Universe. A steel body could withstand any attack, and heat vision could destroy any enemy's body. Even if some purple giant in the future came to Earth with gloves to collect diamonds, he could single-handedly teach him how to be a well-behaved and lovable child. No, calm down now. Peter's inner thoughts made his breathing quicken, his heartbeat racing. He took several deep breaths before finally calming down. Unable to contain his excitement any longer, he slowly approached the spaceship ahead. However, despite his intense anxiety to understand the spaceship's true purpose, Peter remained vigilant. As he approached, he searched the ground for a few pieces of gravel. With a clang, the stone in Peter's hand flew through the air, landing with pinpoint accuracy on the spaceship. Even a pig could hide a spaceship that large. Peter, unconcerned with his appearance, dropped to the ground, his hands protecting his head. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. After more than 10 seconds, seeing nothing happened, Peter slowly raised his head. After testing the waters with several larger rocks, and finally confirming that approaching was safe, Peter swiftly rose from the ground and eagerly approached the spacecraft. Using the flashlight's light, Peter observed it closely and was completely certain, this is indeed a spaceship. Although a thick layer of dust covered the hull, both its appearance and its materials confirmed that it was not a product of modern Earth technology, even in the world of Marvel, where cutting-edge technology is constantly emerging. Gazing at the technologically advanced spacecraft before him, Peter could no longer contain his intense curiosity. He slowly reached out and touched the craft. The moment his finger touched the hull, a loud buzzing sound emanated. The spacecraft, once resembling stone, suddenly came to life, like a dormant beast, emitting a powerful yet not blinding light. The thick dust that had once covered the ship, along with the countless rubble on the surrounding ground, seemed to float upwards, unaffected by Earth's gravity. Then, drawn by an inexplicable force, they gradually gathered around the spaceship, swirling around it in a strange pattern. Such a marvelous sight would have filled anyone with astonishment. However, Peter, caught on the midst of it all, had no time to pay attention to the strange phenomena unfolding around him. The moment his hand touched the spaceship, a peculiar message suddenly appeared in his mind: modify your life, limitless life. Welcome to the infinite life modification system. Your life is yours. Is this the essential system for time travelers? As the system's prompt echoed in Peter's mind, he finally understood that he, like many other time travelers, had the system as his golden finger. Congratulations, host. Your life script has been successfully modified. The new script has been loaded. Hint: the new life script is automatically generated based on the host's strongest desire. Life is like a movie, and death is the curtain call. How to write your new life script is up to you. As more information about the system merged into Peter's mind, he finally understood. It turns out that everything that had happened before was due to the system secretly assisting him, gradually reshaping his life. System, open my panel. The information transmitted by the system detailed how to use it, so Peter tried to issue the command in his mind. The next moment, a virtual image, visible only to Peter, suddenly appeared before his eyes. Name: Peter Parker. Life script: Superman, formerly Lizard Man. Character template: normal Superman. Character abilities: absorbing stellar energy, awakened. Man of Steel, not activated. Super strength, not activated. Super speed, not activated. Super brain, not activated. Super hearing, not activated. Super vision, not activated. Biological stance, not activated. Heat vision, not activated. Freeze breath, not activated. Character weaknesses, none, as requested by the host. Points: 0. Points can be redeemed for character templates, items, etc. Point small, not open. System is awesome. Looking at the long list of abilities following Superman's abilities, although not yet activated, it was still shocking. Furthermore, Superman's most crucial ability, absorbing stellar energy to enhance his self-strengthening, has already awakened. Each of these abilities will awaken one by one as he absorbs sufficient sunlight. Superman's strength lies in his ability to absorb sunlight to continuously enhance his power. Even now, Peter, having acquired the Superman template, feels no physical changes compared to before. However, he knows deep down that as long as he's exposed to sunlight, his body will strengthen at a rate unimaginable for ordinary people, until all the abilities he was meant to possess are activated. Perhaps soon, I'll be able to experience the feeling of free flight for myself. Everyone dreams of flying, and soon, Peter will truly realize his dream of soaring through the clouds in his physical body, even traversing the universe in his physical form. But what about this spaceship? However, Looking at the spaceship created by the system to complete his modified life node, Peter was at a loss as to what to do with it. Chapter 4, First Day as Superman. In the end, Peter didn't move the spaceship. Although it was created by the system, it was no different from a real spaceship. He could fly it, leaving Earth behind, traversing the starry sky, and roaming the universe. However, since his superhuman abilities hadn't yet fully awakened, and Peter didn't know how to fly a spaceship, since his high school didn't offer a major in spaceship driving, Peter decided to leave it where it was. "I'll make you a comfortable home once I've fully awakened my superhuman abilities," Peter muttered to himself, covering the hole in the basement with heavy objects. Then, without looking back, he left the warehouse that had so profoundly changed the lives of others. "It's a shame it's already evening. Guess I'll have to wait until tomorrow to get some sun." Leaving the warehouse, Peter noticed the sun had already set, and the time had arrived. So, no matter how excited he was, wanting to soak up the sun's energy and awaken his superhuman abilities, it would have to wait until tomorrow. Condensing his excitement, Peter returned to the cabin where they would be staying for the night. "Peter, you're back just in time. Come have dinner." Coincidentally, when Peter returned to the cabin, Aunt May had already prepared dinner. "Okay, thank you, Aunt May." Perhaps due to his changing physical state, Peter found himself genuinely hungry. He quickly rushed to the table, grabbed Aunt May's prepared dinner, and began to devour it. Aunt May gazed at Peter, his food guzzling with care, and said lovingly, "Eat slowly, kid. No one's trying to snatch it from you." Soon, Peter stopped. It wasn't because he was full, but because he had almost finished Aunt May's dinner. "I'm going to bed now, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, good night." Although he still felt a tinge of hunger, Peter didn't show it. Instead, he eagerly said goodnight to the Parkers and rushed back to his room. "Kid, there seems to be something strange going on today." Seeing Peter's eagerness to return to his room, Aunt May couldn't help but feel that something was amiss with him. "Probably tired from organizing the warehouse. That's normal. When I was his age, Ben was habitually reading the newspaper." Hearing Aunt May's words, he spoke slowly, without even looking up. "Stop reading. Eat." Aunt May, seemingly slightly annoyed by Ben's nonchalant tone, snatched the newspaper from Ben's hand and tossed the remaining sandwich in front of him. "I'll eat now. Let me finish that article first." Meanwhile, Peter, having returned to his room and settled into bed, didn't fall asleep immediately. Instead, he summoned his system dashboard. What on earth is the origin of this system? It can alter the world's reality without anyone noticing. Previously, Peter had been so overwhelmed by the excitement of gaining superhuman powers that he hadn't delved into the system's origins. But now, having calmed down, he suddenly realized how incredible the system's capabilities were. After all, altering a world's reality without leaving a trace was no simple feat. Furthermore, he was in the Marvel Universe, home to countless beings beyond the cosmic realm. And right here on Earth, there existed a powerful being who knew the past and the future. Forget it. Everything I have comes from this system. What's the point in delving into its origins? I'd rather spend this time carefully studying the correct usage of this system. Peter quickly gave up on exploring the system's origins and instead focused on what other functions it had besides granting him the Superman template. Points can be exchanged for items in the points mall. So, without a doubt, the most important thing about the system is points. But how do I open this system mall, and how do I earn points? Based on his experience with novels from his previous life, Peter easily understood that points were the most important aspect of the system. With points, he could exchange for more powerful items and abilities. For example, a more powerful Superman template seemed to require sufficient points. After all, according to the description on his character panel, he only possessed the normal Superman template at this point. His strongest performance seemed similar to that of the movie Man of Steel, and relying on the accumulation of time to evolve Superman's physique. Who knew how long it would take? After all, in the comics, Superman absorbed energy from the center of the sun for tens of thousands of years before finally evolving into the Golden Superman. Points can be earned in two ways. The first is by completing system-issued tasks, and the second is by changing the lives of characters in the current world. The more famous the character, the more points they earn for altering their life's trajectory. Once 1,000 points have been successfully earned, the points mall will automatically open. Perhaps sensing Peter's inner doubts, a message surfaced in his mind again. It not only explained how to earn points, but also the conditions for opening the points mall. Changing the fate of a famous character, Then if I tell that megalomaniac to learn magic instead of developing armor, that would be considered changing his fate. With this thought, Peter seemed to understand what he should do next. Isn't it just about changing the fate of others? I might not be able to benevolently protect this world like Superman, but like Homelander, making it even more chaotic. Wouldn't that be easy? At this moment, Peter was already imagining how, once his superhuman abilities were fully awakened, he would show the people of this world the awe-inspiring power of Homelander. After all, who hasn't dreamed of possessing superhuman powers and being able to do whatever they wanted? I'm so excited for tomorrow. Peter drifted off to sleep, lost in his endless anticipation. Peter, get up and have breakfast. After breakfast, we have to weed the farm. Early in the morning, while Peter was still dozing off, Uncle Ben's deep voice echoed from outside the door. I'll be right there, Uncle Ben. Proof that even Superman couldn't escape the fate of working alongside Uncle Ben to weed the farm. Hey, Peter, this patch is yours, and that's mine. Let's see who can clear it faster. The vast farm now seemed like an endless prairie. How long will it take to clear this? Peter's heart sank as he gazed at the vast expanse of weeds, nearly a meter high. Thank goodness, weeding doesn't stop me from basking in the sun. At that moment, feeling the sun's intense warmth and brightness, Peter's superhuman blood began to stir. Chapter 5, Man of Steel, Awakening. Ta-da-da, beep beep beep. A single, intense roar filled the empty farmland. The old lawnmower, simmering with diesel, was like a wild horse, unbridled and difficult to control. The distinct aroma of fully burned diesel, mixed with volatile aromatics, was not only less pungent but even brought a distinct sense of pleasure. So comfortable, Peter, pushing the lawnmower, strolled across the empty farmland, like an idle old man strolling through the supermarket with his cart. The sharp blades of the lawnmower instantly chopped away the weeds. From above, the scene seemed even more relaxing than those carpet cleaning videos on YouTube. Under the blazing sunlight overhead, Peter felt no sign of fatigue. In fact, the sun grew hotter as time passed. He felt as if something special was awakening within him. Every cell in his body became hyperactive under the sunlight, like a photosynthetic plant, absorbing sunlight and releasing immense amounts of energy. Such a comfortable feeling made Peter forget any trace of fatigue. He even half closed his eyes, savoring the intense pleasure in his body. The wild lawnmower, which had initially required all his strength to subdue, now seemed quite docile. Gradually, he no longer needed to use both hands to control it. A single hand, lightly placed on the handle, was all he needed to control it. This pleasurable experience lasted until the sun completely set. Wow, is this what it feels like to be full of power? Clenching his fists, Peter felt incredibly powerful. Lying in bed at night, Peter was somewhat bored. Despite a full day's toil, he didn't seem tired at all. Open my control panel, Peter felt as if his body had undergone a dramatic transformation after just one day of sunlight. Name, Peter Parker. Life script, Superman, formerly Lizardman. Character template, normal Superman. Character abilities, stellar energy absorption, awakened. Man of Steel, awakened. Super strength, inactive. Super speed, inactive. Character weaknesses, none. Points. 0 points can be redeemed for character templates, items, etc. Points store, not open. Peter quickly glanced at his character panel and immediately spotted the awakened sign next to Man of Steel. Sure enough, the Man of Steel in the ability column is already awakened. After just one day of sunlight, Man of Steel's powers had awakened. While this wasn't as strong as Zod's, who awakened his powers within a day of arriving on Earth, it was still significantly stronger than Superman, who took over a decade to fully awaken. Maybe it's my age now. Peter felt that perhaps the speed of power awakening was closely related to age. Also, this Iron Man seems more like a passive skill, so it should be the easiest to awaken. Anyone who's played the game knows that passive skills are the easiest to acquire, but also the hardest to develop. However, once they reach a certain level, they become the most powerful. Well, let's continue tomorrow and awaken other abilities as soon as possible. After a day of sunlight, the passive Iron Man had only made Peter slightly stronger than an average person. Forget about being able to withstand a direct nuclear bomb attack like in the movies. Even a powerful bullet would probably kill him. Develop quickly, don't waste time. Peter eagerly anticipated the moment when his other, more powerful abilities would awaken. Congratulations to the host for successfully awakening their first ability. Quests have been issued. Just as Peter was preparing to develop quickly, Having recently focused his energy on basking in the sun and awakening other abilities, the system's voice suddenly echoed in his mind. Wealth and honor don't return home, like a splendid night walk. Possessing superhuman abilities, you should demonstrate your strength to the world. But, your life is yours to decide. Please choose. 1. Show the world you're a benevolent and friendly Superman by solving a crime in progress and shouting, "I am Superman" at the scene. Reward: 100 points. Randomly awaken a power, bonus for the first mission, relinquished after all powers are awakened. 2. The greater my power, the more reckless I become. Create a massive chaos in the city, screw Superman, I'm from my homeland. Reward: 100 points. Randomly awaken a power. 3. Everything is normal, stay alive, and continue to develop, I'm the sage of survival. Reward: increase your sunlight absorption efficiency tenfold within a day. 4. Screw missions, I do whatever I want. Reward: live a free, unfettered life, please choose carefully. Peter was silent for a moment as he looked at the various mission options that appeared on the system panel. The first and second options offer very generous rewards, but I'm currently on a suburban farm far from the city center, so even if I wanted to, I couldn't. Besides, with my newly awakened iron body, I can barely withstand a shotgun bullet. This seems quite dangerous and would expose my identity more easily. As for the fourth option, anyone with a discerning eye will see the problem. If you choose it today, the system might leave you the next moment, leaving you with a life of freedom. So, Peter had no reason to hesitate. Choose the third one. Congratulations to the host, you've completed the mission and received the reward, tenfold the efficiency of sunlight absorption within 1 day, activated promptly at midnight. Note: if you violate the mission requirements or reveal your abilities to others during the reward claim period, the reward will cease immediately. Tenfold the efficiency of sunlight absorption. It seems my strength will increase significantly tomorrow. In just 1 day, Peter's body had become so powerful that it could almost withstand ordinary bullets. And tomorrow, with 10 times the efficiency, just like the slogan in a battery advertisement, 1 day equals 10 days. Peter couldn't imagine how much more powerful he would become. It's a shame the rewards can't be paused or accumulated. Since we only get sunlight during the day, the rewards have been cut in half. If tomorrow's cloudy and rainy, that'll be even worse. I hope tomorrow's nice weather. With hope for tomorrow, Peter unknowingly drifted off to sleep. Even in his dreams, his body underwent dramatic changes at a visible pace. His once frail frame seemed to have undergone a drastic transformation. His already modest height had grown several centimeters overnight. The changes in his body were even more dramatic. Previously, he had barely any defined muscles, but now he had a full 8-pack. His arm muscles were as hard as steel. His pectoral muscles rivaled those of a certain world-renowned athlete who could hold his own against anyone. However, this dramatic change overnight left Peter feeling a bit apprehensive when he woke up in the morning. It's such a big change, it seems a bit hard to hide. Chapter 6, Superman and Spider-Man appear. It was the same country road leading to the suburbs, the same vintage Chevrolet, and the family of 3 inside. But unlike before, this time they were returning from their farm to their home in Queens, New York. Peter's mood was completely different. "'Cause it's hard for me to lose, in my life I've found only time will tell." With his right hand resting on the car window, his fingers gently tapped to the soothing music. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating Peter's face, a touch of gold. As he gazed at the ever-shifting scenery outside, Peter's mood shifted. Gradually, he closed his eyes, savoring the tranquility. This time, Peter didn't complain about the car's slow speed. Anywhere with sunlight was like heaven to him. However, every journey must eventually come to an end. An unknown amount of time passed, perhaps hours. When Peter opened his eyes again, the scene outside had changed dramatically. Tall buildings gradually loomed ahead. The pedestrians and vehicles, which had been almost invisible at first, gradually began to increase in number. The voices of pedestrians and the honking of vehicles merged into a cacophony, bringing back Peter's unforgettable experience of the previous day. New York City, the most famous city in the Marvel Universe, Peter couldn't help but sigh as he took in the now bustling city. Soon, this city would become the most dangerous in the Marvel Universe, with the wormholes appearing above it bringing with them countless Chitauri armies. Fortunately, that playboy hasn't been kidnapped yet. There's still plenty of time for me to continue strengthening before the crisis arrives. Besides, even if the crisis were to strike immediately, I possess strength far superior to Captain 55. More than enough to protect myself and my family. Peter, having awakened some of his superhuman abilities, wasn't worried about the impending crisis. Just as Peter was distracted, the distinct sound of tires scraping against the ground reached his ears. Fortunately, it wasn't a car accident. Realizing it wasn't an accident, Peter abandoned the idea of exposing his abilities and focused on protecting Uncle Ben and Aunt May instead. He pretended to be lurched forward by the force of the sudden brake, then asked in a panic, "Uncle Ben, what's going on?" "Sorry, Peter, I wasn't expecting a group of pedestrians to suddenly rush out in front of us." Uncle Ben hadn't expected the car to suddenly encounter a group of protesters while driving smoothly. Before Peter could figure out what was going on with these protesters, a man wearing a Spider-Man mask, whose face was unclear, suddenly swooped up to his car window. "Hey, man," he said, with a familiar air. "You look like you're in middle school like me. Want to come cheer on Spider-Man with us?" "No, sorry." Resisting the urge to punch the man, Peter politely declined. "Okay, here you go. I hope you'll have the chance to join our Spider-Man fan club." Seeing Peter's refusal, the man gave up the fight and tossed Peter something through the car window. He then continued wearing the mask, chanting, "Spider-Man is a messenger of justice," and inviting passers-by to join them. "It seems we missed something truly remarkable," Uncle Ben couldn't help but sigh as he carefully navigated the parade. "Yes, we did miss something truly remarkable," Peter, looking at the red Spider-Man mask in his hand, smiled. At night, Peter, lying in bed, received another mission after the system refreshed. 1. Show the world you are a benevolent and friendly Superman. Solve an ongoing crime and shout "I am Superman" at the scene. Reward: 100 points. Randomly awaken a power. 2. The greater the power, the more reckless I am. 3. The mission options were virtually identical to the previous ones. It seems that if I keep choosing the third one, these missions won't refresh automatically. Having spent a full week at the farm, Peter had accepted his third mission of the week. Open my dashboard. Name: Peter Parker. Life script: Superman. Character template: Normal Superman. Character abilities: Absorbing stellar energy, Eternal, Man of Steel, Awakened, Supervision, Awakened, Super Hearing, Awakened, Super Strength, Inactive, Super Speed, Inactive. Character weaknesses: None. Points: 0. Point store: Not open. With 10 times the efficiency of sunlight absorption, Peter successfully awakened 2 superhuman abilities in just a few days. The Man of Steel, which he awakened first, had already passed the initial awakening stage. While his body still couldn't withstand a nuclear bomb, it could easily withstand RPGs and grenades. His speed and physical endurance were also far superior to those of an average person. However, the ability he most desperately wanted to awaken, flight, or biological stance, had yet to be awakened. Not bad, much faster than the Superman in the movies. Peter was already quite content, remembering how in a previous Superman TV series, one of the most powerful Supermen didn't finally awaken flight until the final season. Now that I've gained sufficient strength, it's time to try another mission. Peter was actually quite impatient, eager to try another one. But, 1 or 2? Which one should I choose? Peter was torn. Never mind, I'll choose that. Finally, Peter gave up the hesitation and settled on the second option. He chose the second option because he felt that if he chose the first, the subsequent missions would likely follow a Superman-like path. He might be Superman, but he didn't have the compassion of a true Superman. He also didn't enjoy being someone's babysitter. But I can't just go out like that. Otherwise, I'll probably be surrounded the next day. Since he was going out to cause trouble, Peter naturally had to hide his identity. Just as he was pondering how to conceal his identity, he suddenly saw something he had casually tossed on the table when he returned. "Well, it's you." He grabbed the Spider-Man mask from the desk and dug out the nearly forgotten Spider-Man suit from his closet. Then he pulled out 2 small devices he'd made after his time travel from under the bed and attached them to his left and right wrists. "Well, aside from the clothes being a little tight, it looks pretty good." Admiring his current appearance in the mirror, Peter felt quite satisfied. The next moment, he opened the window and jumped from the second floor without hesitation. Superman Spider-Man, here we go. Chapter 7 Spider-Woman. At night, New York City, riven by the vast disparity in wealth, presents 2 polar opposites. Just across the street, they appear to be 2 completely different worlds. One side, awash in luxury, a paradise. The other, a hell of suffering. While countless ordinary people retired to sleep, hoping to better their energy for tomorrow's work, the wealthy neighborhood across the street remains brightly lit and bustling. For the wealthy, the nightlife is just beginning. Similarly, for those seeking to make a quick buck, this place feels like paradise. After all, this is a country steeped in harmony, yet, crimes are committed at every turn. Just now, in a secluded alley at the junction of the urban and affluent areas, a group of trendy black men cornered a middle-aged woman. "Help! Don't come over here," she cried, knowing full well that in this seemingly harmonious city, it's best not to venture out alone at night. But a family member's serious illness, coupled with a crying baby only a dozen months old, forced her to take a risk and seek a more lucrative nighttime job. While she had been lucky enough to avoid accidents before, luck wasn't always on her side. Until today, she was surrounded by a group of thugs. "Don't come over here. I have money. I'll give it to you. Please, please let me go. My child is waiting for me." She frantically pulled the change she had prepared from her pocket, hoping they would let her go. However, she underestimated the thugs' appetite. How could a few $dozen in change satisfy so many people? A burly man wearing a classic cowboy hat, seemingly the leader of the group, slowly took the change from the woman's hand. He calmly straightened the bills one by one, neatly stacking them according to denomination, then folded them in half and gently placed them in the back pocket of his jeans. "Haha, Mom, you don't think you can get rid of us with just this little money, do you?" As he spoke, he slowly pulled a silver revolver from his waist and expertly twirled it around in his hands. The next moment, the spinning revolver suddenly stopped, the muzzle pointed directly at the woman. "Hand over your bank cards and other valuables, or I'll kill you with my gun. Yes, our boss is the most famous quick shooter on this block. If you'd just as well, hand over the money now, or we'll have to search your body for it." Watching the boss's graceful, cowboy-like movements, the other underlings began to speak up, flattering him while threatening the woman. "No, no. My husband and children at home need the money. Please," with a gun pointed at her. The woman was utterly terrified, crying out at the top of her lungs, begging for mercy. However, the cowboy pointing his gun at her didn't lower it. Instead, he slowly began to count, each word clearly. 3. Unfortunately, before he could count a second time, a silvery white spider silk suddenly shot out from the darkness, accurately piercing the wrist where he grasped his revolver. "Who is it?" The cowboy-like gang leader was startled, his usual elegance gone. However, his response was a massive force, flowing through the spider silk clinging to his arm. The immense force lifted him up, his burly frame seemingly weightless, and the revolver in his hand fell to the ground, unable to hold steady. The moment he was lifted by the spider silk, a figure suddenly leaped out of the darkness and delivered a powerful kick to his face. The burly man felt as if he had been hit head-on by a car. He was instantly sent flying backwards, several teeth mixed with blood spurting out of his mouth as he flew through the air. He only fainted after colliding with the wall behind him. "Boss," the other thugs hadn't seen a thing happen. They only saw their boss suddenly fly up and crash into a wall, his life or death unknown. Then they saw someone wearing a black and white bodysuit, a hooded head with spiderweb-like patterns, suddenly approaching them. Oh no! It's Spider-Woman. A week ago, Spider-Woman's name had spread throughout New York City, and every street thug knew there was someone out to pick on them. They instantly understood that the person who suddenly appeared before them was none other than the messenger of justice that instilled fear in New York City's criminals, Spider-Woman. "Everyone, run!" The next moment, the remaining thugs scattered, tumbling and crawling towards the alley. Only one young man seemed so frightened that he collapsed against the wall, his legs giving way. "Haha, that saying is true. You don't need to outrun the predator, just outrun your friends." A young black man ran the fastest, far ahead of the others, and was almost out of the alley. "Great! I'm safe once I'm out of the alley," but before he could even rejoice, he found himself unable to move forward. He was only one step away from the alley's edge, and that very step seemed an insurmountable chasm. The next moment, a tremendous force struck him, sending him flying backwards uncontrollably. Then, a powerful force sent him careening straight into the wall. Puff, puff, puff. The next moment, he was completely tethered to the wall in shameful positions by several balls of spider silk. Meanwhile, his companions suffered the same fate. Before they could escape the alley, they were one by one tethered to the wall in various strange positions with spider silk, forming a bizarre mural. "Haha, all done," Spider-Woman had subdued nearly all the criminals without any difficulty. No, there's one more, but the next moment, her spider sense suddenly activated, and she instinctively turned around, simultaneously shooting a ball of spider silk behind her. Huh? How is that possible? However, her spider silk, which almost never missed its target, missed its mark this time. The threat her spider sense had detected was now in the grasp of a mysterious figure. A towering figure suddenly appeared in the dark alley. With one hand, he grasped the thug who had just collapsed, then picked up a revolver from the ground, preparing to attack him from behind. Though using only one hand, he effortlessly lifted the man, weighing dozens of kilograms. Woo-woo, with his iron-like arm gripping his fate's throat, the thug felt he was about to suffocate. However, the mysterious figure seemed to have completely forgotten he was holding a living person. Instead, he gazed at Spider-Woman not far away and spoke slowly in a deep voice. I finally found you, Spider-Woman. This book has been signed. I hope you will help me save it and vote for it. If you're interested in investing, feel free to do so. Thank you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Venom Spider? At that moment, Peter, clad in a black spider suit, stared blankly at Spider-Woman before him. Her outfit was almost identical to hers in the anime, the tight-fitting suit emphasizing a near-perfect figure. It wrapped around her legs like black silk, making them appear even more graceful and slender. The next moment, Peter's supervision activated, and Spider-Woman's black spider suit became almost transparent. So white. She's indeed my classmate, Gwen Stacy. Heaven knows, Peter's true motivation for using his X-ray vision was to confirm the true identity of the Spider-Woman before him. Put him down. He's suffocating. Spider-Woman had no desire to wonder why this person was searching for her, and why he was staring at her so intently. Although his gaze made her feel a little uncomfortable, as Spider-Woman, she could not bear to see anyone die in front of her, even if that person was a heinous criminal. Oh, I almost forgot about him. Hearing Spider-Woman's reminder, the mysterious figure seemed to finally remember he was carrying a human. Alright, I'll leave him to you, he said, gently tossing the figure towards Spider-Woman. However, Spider-Gwen's body tensed up at the simple gesture. Her spider sense, which could foresee danger, instantly activated. The figure, so gently tossed by the mysterious figure, now hurtled towards Gwen like a cannonball. The immense speed and impact of the toss instantly activated her spider sense. Gwen instinctively dodged the humanoid projectile, narrowly avoiding it before it struck her. Did this guy do this on purpose? Having narrowly avoided the humanoid projectile's attack, Gwen felt a surge of anger. However, she couldn't immediately confront the mysterious figure. Although she had successfully dodged the attack, the being used as a humanoid projectile to attack her had already blasted out of the alley at breakneck speed. If she didn't rescue him, he would have no chance of surviving the speed and impact. Spider-Gwen, unable to bear the sight of anyone dying before her, turned and unleashed a stream of silk. Great, I caught it. Her silk thread accurately struck the unfortunate being flung away, but before Gwen could even congratulate herself, she felt an immense force radiating from the silk thread. So heavy, the force threatened to carry Gwen away with it. Unwilling to give in, Gwen grabbed the silk thread with both hands. Damn it. Stop. This was the first time Gwen had used her full strength since gaining her supernatural powers. The force, weighing over 10 tons, was enough to crush any ordinary person with a single blow. But now, it barely managed to hold back the person the being had casually tossed. The strain of the two immense forces stretched even the special silk thread to the point of breaking. However, the flung figure ultimately lost his momentum, and Spider-Gwen, with all her might, managed to pull him back. Did you do that on purpose, or was it an accident? Having casually pinned the already unconscious figure to the wall with her web, Spider-Gwen turned to the mysterious figure with a solemn expression, demanding, I'm sorry, I said it wasn't intentional. Can you believe me, Peter, hidden beneath his Spider-Man mask, slowly said. I don't believe you. How could Gwen possibly believe anything this idiot in front of her said? Who are you? Why are you dressed like that, now? Gwen finally had a chance to take a closer look at the mysterious figure who had suddenly appeared before her. However, The all-black spider suit he wore seemed to complement her own with some white or red stripes. Ugh, Gwen suddenly felt something strange. Who am I? You can call me Tobey Maguire. Or, in the dim moonlight, the mysterious figure's black spider suit took on an even more mysterious and eerie air. You can also call me Venom Spider. Venom Spider? You can't possibly? How could you? Gwen was incredulous. How could someone in the city, like her, gain extraordinary powers from a spider bite? Yes, I was bitten by a spider with a mutated gene, just like you, and that's how I gained these extraordinary powers. What you don't know is that there aren't just one mutated spiders, but two. The one that bit you was a female, and the one that bit me was a male. Peter, donning the venom vest, began to spin nonsense with Spider-Gwen. How is that possible? Spider-Gwen found this information ridiculous. But then, as if something suddenly occurred to her, she spoke cautiously, uncertainly. What's our relationship? Yes, we're enemies. Peter's voice suddenly turned cold. What? The next moment, to Gwen's astonishment, Peter suddenly raised his arm, and a thread of spider silk shot out from his wrist, aiming directly at Gwen. Under Peter's sudden attack, Gwen's spider sense instantly activated, and she successfully dodged Peter's silk thread with a breathtaking maneuver. Without a moment's pause, she reached out and shot a strand of silk at the nearby building. Then, instantly taking flight, she grasped the silk with one hand and landed on the top of the building, looking down at Peter from above. Tobey Maguire, huh? I don't know where your powers come from, but it's definitely not what you claim. At this moment, Spider-Gwen seemed to regain her composure, slowly analyzing the situation. You probably weren't paying close attention in biology class, or you would have known that female spiders are more powerful than males, and sometimes, they feed on males, Gwen said, not giving Peter a chance to retort, before leaping from the building. Her graceful, slender body twirled in the air, like a nimble female diver, performing a difficult 360-degree, 7.5 turn midair. At the same time, two strands of spider silk shot from both wrists towards Peter below, but Peter easily dodged them. However, the dodged strands stuck to the ground. Gwen, in midair, used the force of the spider silk to adjust her stance and launched a powerful kick at Peter. Facing a transcendent with such immense power, Gwen didn't hesitate to go all out. Jade, Peter, still maintaining his supervision, saw a completely different scene, seemingly oblivious to the danger. Only when Gwen's kick was about to strike him in the face did he slowly raise his arms. Boom! With a dull thud, Peter's body didn't move, only his feet leaving two deep footprints on the ground. Gwen, on the other hand, was sent flying by the powerful recoil, tumbling several times in the air before landing on the ground. While her position wasn't particularly awkward, Gwen's heart sank. This Venom guy has incredible power. Chapter 9, Number 2 bus stopped on the 8th floor. Before Gwen could continue to marvel at the terrifying power possessed by this man named Venom, her spider sense instantly activated again. Damn, too late, but the opponent's speed was too great. Even with her spider sense, Gwen couldn't dodge his attack in advance. She only had time to instinctively cross her arms over her chest to mitigate the force. Boom. The next moment, Gwen felt as if she had been hit by a train. Even someone as powerful as Spider-Gwen was instantly sent flying. Peter, showing no mercy, suddenly unleashed a terrifying burst of power, sending Gwen flying with a single punch. He couldn't help but imitate a classic villain's laugh. Hey, damn, who invented that unique villain laugh? It's so disgusting. Unfortunately, Peter, disgusted, quickly put away his psychotic smile. Bang! Then, with a sudden thrust of force from his legs, he charged after the scent-spinning Gwen like a cannonball. Hello, is this the police station? I need to call the police. Two Spider-Men are fighting. What? I didn't make a false alarm. I saw it with my own eyes. As Peter disappeared into the alley, the woman who had just been robbed finally stood up shakily. Trembling, she pulled out her phone and dialed the police. She had been terrified to the point of not making a sound, afraid that the guy with the most perverse laugh would notice her. Boom. On the street separating the civilian and wealthy residential areas, a figure flew backwards from an alley at breakneck speed. It finally came to a stop after crashing into an office building dozens of meters away. The immense force of the impact had even dented the wall. SHH, that hurts. Gwen, a delicate girl, had never suffered such a serious injury since she was a child. Unexpectedly, after becoming Spider-Woman, possessing unmatched strength, she would suffer such a severe injury for the first time. Damn it. That guy's here again, and during the excruciating pain, Gwen finally pulled herself free from the deep wall. But before she could recover, she saw a familiar figure burst out from the alley again, aiming directly at her. This time, Gwen, prepared, used her agility to manage a few awkward rolls on the wall, avoiding the center of the attack. Boom. The next moment, Peter's terrifying attack instantly struck her. A powerful roar, like a missile, erupted. The terrifying force erupted, and the entire office building shook violently as if struck by an earthquake. The center wall had already cracked, and the cracks spread rapidly in a spiderweb-like pattern. Simultaneously, a massive invisible shockwave swept through, instantly shattering nearly all the glass along the wall. Gwen, caught in the vicinity of the attack, was flung dozens of meters away like a sack. Just as she was about to slam into the street, Gwen suddenly shot a strand of silk from her wrist, halting her fall. The force of the impact sent her swinging off into the distance like a swing. HMPH, you're not the only one who can use silk. Peter, watching Gwen seemingly flee, didn't give up pursuit. He also fired a strand of silk from his web shooter. Then, like Gwen, he harnessed the power of the silk to ripple through the city's skyscrapers. Upon arriving in this world, Peter had already prepared for his Spider-Man transformation. This included the spider suit and the web shooter. While he wasn't the real Spider-Man at this moment, his extraordinary strength and agility made him almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Well, there are still some differences between me and the real Spider-Man now, however, Peter's confidence was quickly shattered. After all, this was his first time using the web shooter, Caspri, so it was understandable that he wasn't very proficient with the silk. Well, after chasing Gwen for several blocks, not only failing to catch up, but even the gap between them was widening, Peter consoled himself with this. But don't forget, I'm playing a cruel villain, and all messengers of justice share a common, fatal weakness. Watching Gwen run further and further away, Peter prepared to unleash the necessary villain's self-awareness. The next moment, Peter abandoned his attempt to swing from the tall buildings with his web. Instead, he landed on the street, randomly selecting a parked car, smashed the window with a punch, and with one hand, grabbed the A-pillar. Aiming for Gwen, who was still swinging between the tall buildings ahead, he effortlessly swung the entire car away. Hey, that guy may be powerful, but he still lacks Spider-Man experience. Seeing that she was about to leave him far behind, Gwen felt a flicker of joy for the first time. Still trying, with her spider sense suddenly activated, Gwen, almost subconsciously, used the web's power to swerve sideways in the air. Whoosh! The next moment, a car flew past her, barely scraping past. It continued its momentum, smashing directly into a nearby building. Fortunately, there was no movie-like explosion. This guy deserves to die. Still dazed, Gwen couldn't help but look back. That single glance instantly changed her expression. She saw the man calling himself Venom on the ground had once again lifted a car and flung it directly at her. More importantly, there was a middle-aged man in the driver's seat, who was now screaming in fear. Whoosh! Another car came hurtling through the air. But this time, Gwen couldn't dodge it as she had just done. As Spider-Woman, she couldn't give up on saving any innocent people in danger. Using the power of her web, she leaped upward, her graceful body seemingly hanging upside down between the buildings, successfully avoiding the car's head-on impact. Then, while still suspended above the car, Gwen quickly launched several strands of web onto the vehicle. Then, using the pull of the spider silk, combined with his own considerable strength, he finally managed to dissipate the immense impact of the entire car after breaking several strands of the silk. Yet, that's it. Gwen gazed at the only unlit window of a tall building not far away. Using the spider silk, she slowly swung the two cars over. With a crash, a window shattered as a car suddenly barreled through the window and into the room. "Hi, how are you?" the driver greeted, aghast, apologetically, watching the couple, entangled in bed, startled and slumped under by his sudden intrusion. "Fuck, how the hell are you driving? This is the 8th floor," the man, nearly paralyzed by fear, yelled at the driver, who was stuck in the window and unable to open the door. P.S. Please share, read, invest, and reward. Thank you all. Chapter 10 3-star Good Citizen. In the bedroom of a luxury apartment in Queens, New York, the sudden ringing of the phone woke a middle-aged couple soundly asleep in bed. "Hello, this is George Stacy. "What's going on?" the man answered without hesitation. As the commissioner of the New York City Police Department, even though he was only in charge of a precinct, he knew that whenever his phone rang, he had to answer it. "Commissioner Stacy, Spider-Woman has appeared in the city again. And this time, the situation is very serious. You may need to come and take charge of it yourself." That Spider-Woman again. Although the exact situation was still unclear, George Stacy had already sat up in bed. "What's going on?" he demanded details while quickly getting dressed. "Chief, we are not very clear about the specific situation. We just received a call from a citizen who said that he saw two Spider-Men fighting in the city. At first we thought it was a false alarm, until we received more than a dozen calls from citizens in succession, all claiming to have seen two Spider-Men fighting in the city. Right now, several streets in the city have become extremely chaotic because of their fighting, and the casualties at the scene are difficult to determine for the time being. However, we have notified the hospital and the fire department, and all the police officers on duty in our branch have been sent there for support. Chief, what should we do next? Please give us your instructions." The police officer on the other end of the phone reported the current situation quickly and orderly in one breath, and then waited for the chief's instructions. "Notify all officers currently off duty at the police station. If you're asleep, call me to wake me up. For those living nearby, have them rush directly to the scene. Use all available weapons and equipment. This time, we're going to completely eliminate this guy in the spider mask. Also, send a helicopter to my residence to pick me up." After quickly giving all the instructions, George hung up the phone, not caring about the officer's reaction. He had already dressed, donned his badge and service weapon, and left his residence without even saying goodbye to his wife. "This time, I'm going to personally remove your mask and let all the citizens of New York see what kind of face lies beneath that terrifying spider mask." Meanwhile, the battle between the two Spider-Men finally awoke the residents of the surrounding streets, transforming the once quiet night into a chaotic scene reminiscent of daylight. "What's going on? I don't know. What's going on over there?" Countless onlookers, bewildered by the situation, ventured out into the streets, hoping to get a closer look. However, the people fleeing the battle scene wished they had two more legs so they could flee this dangerous scene more quickly. In the heart of the chaos, police officers had already arrived and were quickly evacuating the surrounding crowds. Their strength was powerless to intervene in the clash between the two transcendents. Did you see how few cars on that street were still intact? They didn't think their mortal bodies could be tougher than metal. After all, they only made a few $1,000s a month. There was no point risking their lives for such a feat. Helping to evacuate the crowds at close range was already a sign of their courage. Peter, transformed into a maniac bomber, used countless vehicles as weapons and launched them at Gwen. Gwen nimbly dodged the unmanned vehicles while also trying to rescue the ones with people inside. This made it impossible for Gwen to continue using her agility to escape. Peter was gradually catching up to her. That is, until she saved another unfortunate individual who had just experienced a roller coaster ride. Her spider sense suddenly sounded an alarm. Oh, shit. Gwen, always known for her gentle beauty, was so angry she wanted to curse. "This damn thing, why does it keep chasing me?" However, her inward curses couldn't resolve the current predicament. Having previously rescued countless innocent people, her strength had been greatly depleted. Even if her spider sense had sensed the danger, her exhausted body was completely unable to react instantly and evade. A familiar sound, along with a sticky feeling behind her, made Gwen fully aware of her current predicament. However, she had no time to break free from the spider webs entwining her. She felt a tremendous force rip through them. The next moment, she was pulled down from dozens of meters in the air. Her body slammed into a car that someone had abandoned and forgotten to close in their hasty escape. Bang! The terrifying force crushed the car. To make matters worse, perhaps some unfortunate buff had been triggered this time. The car that was struck exploded with a bang, just like something out of a Hollywood blockbuster, a terrifying heat wave engulfing Gwen. This feels like a blockbuster. That should be enough to complete the mission now, right? Peter, however, didn't rush to pursue Gwen. Instead, he took the time to call up his system to check if the mission was complete. Oh my god, don't lie to me, this isn't enough. However, looking at the still uncompleted mission, Peter couldn't help but internally complain. If it's not big enough, then let's make a bigger noise. Without further hesitation, Peter once again gazed at the explosion side in the distance. Hey, cough, cough, how come I'm getting used to it? As Peter watched, a figure suddenly leaped from the center of the explosion, agilely somersaulting through the air. Then, landing in front of Peter in a strikingly cool superhero-like manner. However, if you ignored the tight Spider-Man suit she was wearing, which had been burned through by the intense heat of the explosion, exposing large swathes of her white skin, her pose was indeed quite impressive. Peter's eyes were fixed on Gwen, naturally not because of her graceful figure or her now exposed fair skin. After all, with his X-ray vision, he had already seen. Ahem, Peter simply thought, won't her knees hurt from landing like that? Seeing Gwen kneeling on the ground with her knee exposed, she couldn't help but feel a slight ache in his own. Tobey Maguire, you've succeeded in pissing me off. Gwen slowly raised her head, the coldness in her eyes palpable even without seeing them. This was the first time Gwen had felt so utterly humiliated since becoming Spider-Woman. In her eyes, Peter had become a heinous, unforgivable criminal. Whoosh! However, before Gwen could vent her intense anger, two beams of light suddenly descended from the sky, illuminating the two figures clearly. Two helicopters, unknowingly, were already hovering overhead. Whirring, hissing. Simultaneously, a chorus of sirens blared from afar, followed by the sharp screeching of tires skidding across the road. Several police cars had already surrounded the two men. Oh. I finally understand. Without enough stars, how can it be considered a large-scale chaos? Chapter 11 Gwen's Choice. I'm sorry, General Ross. This incident is under the jurisdiction of the NYPD. The military has no need to intervene, okay, that's all. I've arrived at the scene. I'm hanging up now. In the helicopter, Commissioner George Stacy hung up the call from the military without hesitation. Commissioner, if you reject them so bluntly, will it? The officers nearby couldn't help but worry about their chief's future, seeing how he showed such disrespect to the military. After all, while the police department and the military belong to different factions, their relationship is complex. Furthermore, the other party is a general. If he uses underhanded tactics, the chief's future could be in jeopardy. Huh? How could those guys in the military be so kind as to help us catch criminals? They are offering to help now, just to get the genetic samples of the two people with extraordinary abilities below, and then use them to conduct some terrible genetic experiments to explore the secrets hidden in them. After all, it's well known that the military wants to create another super soldier comparable to Captain America. I now suspect that these guys who appear one after another and have powerful abilities are the products of some special experiments of their military. However, no matter what, since they have disrupted the order in my jurisdiction, our police station must arrest them and bring them to justice. Only in this way can we face the citizens of this city with dignity. Sheriff George looked at the two Spider-Men who were surrounded below, with a firm look in his eyes. This is the New York Police. Listen up, those in front. You are surrounded. Please immediately lower your weapons, cease your criminal acts, raise your hands, and lie on the ground. If you resist, we reserve the right to shoot you immediately. Dozens of police cars, several helicopter gunships, and hundreds of armed officers surrounded Gwen and Peter. An officer with a megaphone began shouting at the two. Damn it. What do we do now? Surrounded by police, Gwen was terribly anxious. After all, while her current strength far surpassed that of an average person, it still wasn't enough to withstand the barrage of bullets. If there were only a few armed officers, she could rely on her powerful spider sense to dodge their shots. But now, with nearly 100 police officers surrounding her and helicopter gunships providing cover, escape was no easy task. It's all this damn guy's fault. Knowing she couldn't escape, Gwen slowly raised her hands, ready to surrender, silently cursing Peter. But if I'm caught, how will I face my father? However, her biggest fear at the moment wasn't being apprehended by the police, but facing her father, the police chief. After all, she'd heard him repeatedly at the dinner table express his hatred for Spider-Woman, and thus for herself. Officers, are you mistaken? I'm not some criminal, but a renowned citizen of Los Santos. At this moment, besides Gwen, the surrounded Peter also slowly raised his hands and bent his legs, pretending to lie on the ground, while speaking to the surrounding police officers with a relaxed tone. Where is Los Santos? I don't know, probably some remote town. The surrounding police officers naturally had no idea where Los Santos was. I repeat, to avoid unnecessary casualties, please raise your hands immediately, lie on the ground, and do not resist. Otherwise, we will shoot immediately. Seeing that the two men seemed to have given up their resistance, the police dispatched several officers to restrain them. The officers slowly approached the two, but they remained vigilant, not lowering their guns to prevent any accidents. "Hey, sorry I forgot to tell you, my good citizen is 5-star." When the officers were within a few meters of the two, Peter, dressed in a black spider suit and half crouched on the ground, his expression indistinct, smiled again and spoke slowly. "No. All officers, shoot immediately without authorization." However, Sergeant George, observing the situation from the helicopter, suddenly sensed something was amiss and spoke anxiously into his intercom without hesitation. He also shouted to the helicopter pilot, "Quick, raise the helicopter's altitude." However, everything was still too late. Bang! A loud bang like muffled thunder suddenly exploded beneath Peter's feet. It was as if an anti-tank mine had been buried beneath his feet. The immense force instantly sent several officers, who were only a few meters away, flying backwards. Even the sturdy street, capable of supporting trucks weighing dozens of tons, was shattered by the impact, leaving a crater several meters deep. Around the crater, countless cracks spread rapidly like a spider web. A cloud of dust rose, obscuring the scene. The suddenness of the incident startled the surrounding officers, but thanks to the sheriff's warning, they reacted quickly. Without hesitation, pistols, rifles, and other weapons were unleashed into the smoke. Thousands of rounds rained down in a matter of seconds, reducing even an elephant to a heap of shredded flesh. Yet, not a single scream emanated from the smoke, as if their bullets had simply hit the air. Boom! Just as they were lost in their confusion, a violent explosion suddenly erupted from the sky, instantly drawing everyone's attention. "Oh no! He's up there!" Someone had already seen the scene clearly. "Oh my god! How could this be?" However, the sight before them left everyone in a state of disbelief. One of the several helicopter gunships that had been circling overhead had been completely shattered in two, its wreckage plummeting. Even more incredible was the sudden burst of a figure from the shattered fuselage, charging directly towards the nearest helicopter. Is this truly possible for a human? Watching the helicopter being instantly ripped apart in midair, nearly everyone present was speechless with shock. Good opportunity. Meanwhile, as the officers were overwhelmed by the scene, Gwen saw her perfect opportunity to escape. But, however, watching the wreckage of the helicopter, shot down by the creature known as Venom, plummet to the ground, and the screaming survivors within, Gwen finally paused in her attempts to flee. The next moment, the spider silk from her wrist shot out, darting into the sky towards the falling helicopter wreckage. Chapter 12: The Figure in the Cloak. How is this possible? Is this guy still human? At this moment, not only those on the ground were shocked by the scene unfolding in the sky. Those in the other helicopters also felt the horror of the scene firsthand. This guy is a demon. Anyone who saw a human pierce through an attack helicopter with their flesh and tear it apart would likely find it difficult to remain calm. If you could, then he's coming for you now. No, he's coming for us. Descend. At this moment, the pilot of another targeted helicopter watched with his own eyes as the devil who had already destroyed one helicopter now hurtled towards him. Terror filled his heart. He frantically maneuvered his plane to descend, attempting to avoid the onrushing madman. Phew, close call. The intense fear seemed to unleash his extraordinary piloting abilities. While descending, he maneuvered with incredible difficulty, luckily dodging the onrushing Peter. However, Peter, passing overhead, suddenly shot two strands of spider silk towards the helicopter below. With the help of the silk, Peter instantly overcame his inability to turn while jumping. The next moment, Peter, using the power of the spider silk, launched a fierce kick at the helicopter. Clang clang clang. The helicopter's propellers, spinning at hundreds of revolutions per minute, would have ripped apart ordinary flesh with such force. However, as they struck Peter's body, it felt like a metal rod piercing the plastic blades. Countless blades buckled, some even broke, and Peter forcibly stopped the helicopter. The entire aircraft, in that instant, lost control and plummeted downward. Da-da-da. Just as Peter, perched atop the helicopter, prepared to clench his fists and utterly destroy it, a helicopter suddenly appeared behind him, its four 12.7mm machine guns unleashing a fierce barrage of flames. The helicopter's bullets, powerful enough to tear apart an armored vehicle, struck Peter's body, sending out dazzling sparks and the mere sound of metal clashing. Peter remained unmoved by the machine gun fire. His powerful steel frame gave him a godlike aura. Bullets hitting him felt like mosquito bites. HMPH, Peter sneered inwardly, then snapped off the helicopter's still intact propeller blade. Grabbing the end of the blade, he flung it forward like a boomerang. With a swish, the immense force imbued the blade with astonishing force and speed. "Sheriff, get out of the way!" Aboard the helicopter sat Sheriff George and one of his officers. The moment Peter snapped the blade, the helicopter pilot sensed something was amiss and veered off, attempting to avoid the onslaught of the spinning blades. However, they were ultimately unable to evade the attack. The rapidly spinning blades transformed into razor-sharp blades. The rapidly approaching blade sliced through the tail fin, completely separating the cockpit and cockpit from the rear fuselage. The entire helicopter, including the propeller, was instantly severed. Fortunately, the cabin, where their personnel were stationed, escaped the attack, and all occupants were unharmed. Unfortunately, without its propellers and tail, the plane had no power left, and could only watch helplessly as it slowly plummeted. Congratulations, host. Mission completed. Rewards being distributed, huh? Mission finally complete. Just as Peter was about to destroy several more helicopters, he suddenly heard the sound of mission completion. Almost instantly, he felt an extremely strange sensation in his body. Is this the reward for awakening a random ability after completing the mission? The unusual sensation didn't worry Peter at all, but instead filled him with excitement. Each of Superman's abilities was incredibly powerful, and no matter which one was awakened, the reward was a sure win for him. But since the mission is complete, it's time to leave. Peter, having achieved his mission's purpose, prepared to depart without hesitation, heading for a safe place to awaken his abilities. With this thought, Peter, standing atop the helicopter, didn't hesitate. He instantly gave his legs a push, and like a rocket, he shot off into the darkness beyond. His incredible speed made him disappear in the blink of an eye. At the same time, the system's voice echoed again in Peter's ears, rewards distributed. Congratulations to the host for earning 100 points. The randomly awakened special ability is. Even as Peter left, the situation at the scene continued unresolved. Peter's actions before leaving, in just a dozen seconds, had completely destroyed 3 helicopter gunships. The wreckage of the 3 helicopters was still falling from the sky. Several survivors were still among the wreckage, awaiting their death in utter fear. Goodbye, Mom. I hope my posthumous pension will allow you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. Falling from a height of hundreds of meters, their chances of survival were slim, and at this altitude, parachutes were practically useless. As they experienced their final seconds before death, countless thoughts of their loved ones surged in their hearts. Yet, great. She did it. Well done, Spider-Woman. Incredible, truly incredible. Suddenly, they were interrupted by a roar of cheers from below. Just seconds earlier, the wreckage of the first helicopter destroyed, with its 2 survivors, was about to plummet to the ground. Just when everyone thought tragedy was inevitable, a silvery white spider's thread descended from the sky. A graceful and beautiful figure emerged from the darkness, like an angel from heaven, successfully saving the survivors from the wreckage. Then, she also saved the survivors from the second helicopter that crashed. This time, the officers on the ground, witnessing the entire scene, couldn't help but cheer heartily. At that moment, in the hearts of all the officers, the figure in the tattered spider suit was no longer a criminal causing chaos. Instead, it was a hero saving lives in times of crisis. Dear Gwen and Helen, I'm so sorry I can't see you in my final moments. I apologize. With a plane just a few dozen meters from the ground, George Stacy could only internally express his apologies to his wife and daughter. Bang! Suddenly, a voice interrupted George's thoughts. He opened his eyes abruptly, only to be met by a familiar figure. Spider-Woman, the very person he'd been racking his brains to apprehend, somehow arrived inside the plane just as it was about to fall. Hold still. Don't move, or I'll shoot. Without hesitation, Sergeant George drew his service pistol and pointed it at the figure before him. However, the figure seemed oblivious to his warning. He smashed through the windows on both sides of the plane and then shot streams of silk at the tall buildings on either side. Then, he flipped himself upside down, his long legs resting on the ceiling. Instantly, the rapidly falling plane was halted by the immense force, its descent slowing. It finally came to a complete stop, less than 10 meters from the ground. Meanwhile, despite the sudden halt in the plane's fall, leaving several occupants unsteady, Sergeant George never lowered his gun, its muzzle fixed on Spider-Woman, who was struggling to save them. Get out of here. I can't hold on much longer. Only after the cabin had come to a complete stop did Gwen, her knuckles bleeding from the effort of clinging to the spider silk, finally speak anxiously. The other officers below had already found something soft and spread it under the cabin. You guys go down first, Sheriff. What about you? Even as everyone in the cabin had been successfully rescued, Sheriff George seemed reluctant to leave. Today I want to see what faces hidden beneath that mask. George slowly approached Gwen, who was unable to move, and prepared to remove her mask. However, just as he was about to peel off Spider-Woman's mask, he suddenly stopped. Hey, you look like you need help. Just as George seemed to hesitate, a voice suddenly rang out from nearby. At the same time, Gwen felt as if the cabin had suddenly lost its weight. She quickly rolled to the ground, avoiding George's hand. The next moment, they both looked in the direction of the sound, and saw a guy in a red cloak floating outside the cabin. He easily lifted the cabin with one hand, which Gwen had to use all his strength to stop from falling. Chapter 13 Unlock the true Superman of flight. Seeing the figure completely defying gravity, its powerful frame seemingly weightless, floating in the air, both Gwen and the experienced Sheriff George were stunned. Humans cannot fly without external equipment. This is common knowledge, even a 3-year-old knows. However, the scene before them shattered their worldviews. Who are you? After a moment's pause, Sheriff George finally reacted, pointing his gun without hesitation at the figure before him. Perhaps only the gun in his hand could dispel his inner fear of the unknown and bring him a glimmer of comfort. I advise you to put that thing down. I'm not used to being pointed at. Besides, it poses no threat to me. Peter spoke with a hint of coldness in his voice as he single-handedly lifted the nearly 10-ton cabin and slowly descended to the ground. Perhaps sensing the coldness in the mysterious man's tone, Sheriff George this time obediently lowered his gun and said sincerely, "All right, I apologize. Is this still the same stubborn father who would rather get hurt than reveal his mask?" Watching her father's actions, Gwen felt a deep sense of injustice. If George knew her inner thoughts, he would only say, "I may be stubborn, but I'm not stupid." Think about it, can you threaten someone like that with a broken pistol? Bang! Peter had already reached the ground and casually set the cabin on the ground. The next moment, all the officers waiting on the ground quickly gathered around him. Some looked in disbelief. Others gazed at his face, shrouded in a bioforce field, filled with curiosity. A few officers nervously pointed their guns at him. "Put your guns down," George, emerging from the cabin, ordered the surrounding officers to lower their weapons without hesitation. "Sir," George said, raising his HUD 45 degrees and gazing up at the floating figure, mentally gathering his words. Then, he continued slowly, "Are you a mutant? A superpowered being? An alien, or a god?" George had a suspicion, but he didn't ask directly. "What do you think?" Peter looked down at everyone below, including a figure trying to sneak away. His voice, deep yet commanding, echoed throughout the room. Suddenly, before everyone's stunned gaze, his figure soared skyward. Hundreds of meters above, an umbrella-shaped sonic boom cloud appeared around him. 2 seconds later, the sonic boom echoed in everyone's ears, confirming that what they were seeing was no illusion. "I know, he's Superman. The Superman from the comics." After a pause, a cry of surprise suddenly shattered the stillness. The crowd erupted in excitement. Comics becoming reality. Is there anything more incredible than this? "Sheriff, Spider-Woman is missing." Just as everyone was in disbelief, the officer who had been rescued by Gwen alongside Sheriff George suddenly came over to report. "I understand," Sheriff George said slowly, his gaze still fixed on the long-vanished figure in the sky. "Sheriff, we gained almost nothing in this operation, but suffered heavy losses, especially 3 helicopters, which were destroyed. Thankfully, thanks to Spider-Woman, we didn't lose anyone, only a few officers were injured. So, should we?" The officer briefly outlined the losses incurred, then hesitated, as if he wanted to say something but was afraid to. Meanwhile, the other officers, who had witnessed Spider-Woman's heroic act of saving all the survivors, looked at Sheriff George with anticipation. "In that case, the arrest warrant for Spider-Woman will be lifted." "Yeah, Chief, smart." The officers on the scene burst into applause, especially the survivors Spider-Woman had just rescued. "All right, issue a new wanted order to search for the other individual causing havoc in the city." George slowly lowered his hands, interrupting the excitement, and then issued another order. "Also, regarding what just happened, all present must maintain strict confidentiality." Sergeant George's face was now filled with seriousness. "All right, everyone, clean up the scene and restore order as quickly as possible." With this final order, Sergeant George walked away. "Sheriff, would you like a helicopter to take you back home to rest?" a police officer kindly offered as he prepared to leave. "I'd rather drive back myself." Gazing at the still uncleared helicopter wreckage, George rejected the idea of continuing the helicopter ride without hesitation. Meanwhile, far above 10,000 meters, a figure streaked through the air, leaving behind only a roar of excitement. "Before, I was a mere Superman. Now, I am a true Superman." The next moment, the figure, soaring high in the sky, picked up speed again and dove directly towards the clouds below. The intense impact of the breakneck speed instantly shattered the cotton candy-like clouds. A silvery wake trailed behind the figure darting through the clouds, leaving a strange pattern in the sky that lingered for a long time. The figure suddenly broke through the clouds and dived down again. Above the vast ocean, a figure suddenly appeared, flying almost close to the surface. The air currents driven by the supersonic speed were like a sharp sword, carving a deep gully in the sea. Amidst the flying waves, Peter suddenly spotted what seemed to be a gigantic creature beneath the surface. Without hesitation, he dove in. Crash! The next moment, a massive wave exploded on the surface hundreds of meters ahead. A massive whale leaped from the surface, soaring tens of meters into the air. The whale, "I'm taking off. I'm coming down again." Splash! He had experienced skipping stones with a whale. Watching a massive wave explode on the sea, Peter's figure soared into the sky once more, instantly breaking the sound barrier and piercing the clouds. Spotting a passenger plane dozens of kilometers ahead, Peter accelerated again, darting in pursuit. After catching up in mere seconds, Peter slowed down, keeping pace with the aircraft. Then, slowly approaching the window, he gently tapped on the shaded window. As the shade opened, a child peered out the window, bewildered. "Dad, look! Superman!" Before his father could turn around, Peter waved to the child in the plane. The next moment, he soared into the sky once more, soaring straight up. The scene shifted. In the vast expanse of outer space, a figure stretched out its arms, greeting the sun rising slowly over the horizon. A golden glow bathed its body, a dreamlike scene. P.S. If you have any monthly recommendation tickets, please vote. Thank you. Chapter 14 Heat Vision Frozen Breath Awakening. A police car slowly pulled up in front of a luxury apartment building in Queens. Sergeant George, having finished his work, stepped out, closed the door, and quickly walked to the entrance. A bit impatient, he paused at the door. After taking a deep breath, he gently opened the door and changed into his slippers. Then, carefully moving his steps, he slowly made his way to his bedroom. However, as he passed his daughter's bedroom door in the hallway, he paused. "It seems like I haven't cared about Gwen in a long time." Tonight's experience had made George realize many things. In the moment of the helicopter crash, when he was so close to death, he didn't have much fear of death. As a police officer, he had long accepted the possibility of dying in the line of duty. However, when death actually came, he was overwhelmed by the longing for his daughter and wife. He was afraid that he would never see them again. As if mustering courage, George stepped to his daughter's door and slowly raised his hand. But in the end, he didn't knock, and let it go. That Spider-Woman seems about the same age as Gwen. Leaving Gwen's bedroom and heading towards his own, George suddenly remembered the Spider-Girl who had risked her life and her identity to save him today. Just before he was about to unmask her, it was the thought of his daughter that finally stopped him. "Alice, after what happened today, the police department will probably be busy for a long time. I don't know when I'll get a chance to take some time off and spend some quality time with my family." George sighed helplessly and could only silently return to his bedroom. To become sheriff in his 40s, he had undoubtedly given up a lot, including time to spend with his family. Now, in Gwen's bedroom, Gwen, who had been lying in bed and seemed sound asleep, suddenly opened her eyes after her sensitive senses sensed her father's departure. Slowly rising, he carefully removed his tights, which were already tattered from tonight's battle. Despite being very careful, he still touched her injured area, and the sudden pain almost made her cry out in pain. "Thankfully, my body has changed. My recovery ability is several times stronger than an average person's, otherwise, I really don't know how I'd explain it tomorrow." Applying the medicine she'd prepared to the injured area, Gwen endured the excruciating pain and returned to her bed, slowly closing her eyes. But a few minutes later, they suddenly opened again. "Damn it. I can't sleep at all." Although physically exhausted, Gwen's spirit remained incredibly high. Finally, She pulled out a pen and a notebook from her bedside table, leaned back on the bed, and began to slowly sketch. Soon, a lifelike drawing was complete. On the pristine white notebook, a figure in a black spider costume leaped out. With a swish, the moment she finished the drawing, she tore it into countless tiny pieces without hesitation and tossed it into the trash. Finally feeling better, after letting off some steam in this unique way, Gwen felt much better. And that guy, is he really Superman? As she recalled the figure floating in the air, the shock she had felt, Gwen slowly began to sketch on the notebook. At that moment, far above space, Peter, arms outstretched, embracing the sun, was carefully experiencing the sensation, a stark contrast to the sun's radiance on Earth. At that moment, every cell in his body seemed to come to life. Countless rays of sunlight rushed to absorb his body, transforming into a unique energy through specialized cellular processes. With every minute, even every second, his body was strengthening at an incredibly rapid rate. For hours, Peter remained in the sun-embracing position in space. The night in New York had ended, and the early morning sun had risen in the east. Peter, who had been tightly shut, finally opened his eyes. The moment he did, a golden light seemed to flicker within his glittering pupils. The next moment, he abruptly reversed course, hurtling towards the earth below. In less than a minute, Peter had returned to land from hundreds of kilometers of space. However, upon returning to Earth, Peter didn't rush home. Instead, he flew to a desolate land. The area was filled with giant boulders of varying sizes, devoid of even a single weed. The shortest was only a few meters tall, while the tallest reached nearly 100 meters, resembling a miniature mountain. Peter slowly flew over a boulder nearly 10 meters in diameter. His eyes widened as he stared fiercely at the boulder before him. A second, 10 seconds, a minute, minutes passed as Peter stared at the boulder with his eyes wide open. It was as if the boulder bore him a deep hatred, and he wanted to crush it with his fierce gaze. Nearly 10 minutes had passed, and even his steel-like body couldn't help but feel his eyes dry. Suddenly, a scorching energy converged in his eyes. In an instant, Peter's previously pitch-black pupils shone with a bright red, like a raging flame. In a split second, the fiery crimson filled his eyes. A crimson light shone within them, like a demon from hell. Peter roared, and two thick, red rays of heat instantly shot out from his blazing eyes. Carrying terrifying heat and immense force, they instantly struck the boulder below him. With a sizzling impact, the powerful force instantly pierced the boulder before him. The scorching heat instantly seared the interior of the boulder, emitting a red glow like red-hot metal. Boom! Seconds later, the rock, its internal and external temperatures drastically out of balance, exploded with a bang. Peter instinctively turned his head, but the rays of heat in his eyes continued to follow his gaze, sweeping a trench several meters deep across the ground. Wherever the rays passed, everything was instantly cut, countless boulders shattered in two. A lingering red glow lingered on the cross-sections, as if cut by a sharp sword. In the process, he even cut a boulder several dozen meters tall in half vertically. The broken boulder toppled over in two directions, kicking up a cloud of dust. It wasn't until Peter's gaze turned to the sky, and scarlet heat vision shot straight into the sky, breaking the clouds above, that Peter was finally able to control this powerful force and suddenly closed his eyes. Even then, through his closed eyelids, he could still see two red eyes wrapped within them. Gradually, the red light in his eyes gradually faded. Congratulations to the host, you have successfully awakened heat vision and frozen breath. The next moment, the system's voice also sounded in his mind at the right time. P.S. Please collect and read it, thank you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 He is Superman. The boundless ocean surged like a raging beast, its waves surging like a raging beast. Suddenly, a figure soared through the sky. As it passed, a thick mist erupted from its mouth. With a crackling sound, the white mist melted into the sea, instantly freezing the entire ocean into ice. The waves, once surging like a giant beast, froze in an instant, the waves and the surface frozen into a massive ice sculpture. Before, I was only a fake Superman, now, I am a true Superman. After a casual experiment with his newly awakened ice breath, Peter felt that he could finally be called a true Superman. The next moment, Peter's flight speed increased, and he soared towards his New York home. Without alerting anyone, Peter quickly returned to his bedroom through a second-floor window. He rolled up the clothes he'd scavenged from an empty room and the cloak he'd crudely crafted from red curtains, then carelessly tossed them into the trash. Peter pretended to have just gotten out of bed and slowly walked downstairs. "Uncle Ben, Aunt May, good morning," he greeted, then sat down at the dining table and picked up his breakfast. "Good morning, Peter," they replied, both sitting on the sofa, watching the TV, without turning back. It was then that Peter noticed a familiar figure on the TV. Is it reporting on what happened last night? Oh, it doesn't have anything to do with me. I'd better fill my stomach first." Peter paid no attention to what was being said, picking up his breakfast and leisurely devouring it, as if the events of the previous night had nothing to do with him. However, unlike Peter's leisurely enjoyment of his delicious breakfast, Police Chief George Stacy, who had rested for less than 6 hours, was already dressed in his neat uniform, exuding an air of authority. He stood at the podium with a solemn expression. "I'm deeply sorry. On behalf of all officers in the New York Police Department, I sincerely apologize for the devastating incident that occurred last night." Without hesitation, Sergeant George faced the cameras and bowed deeply in apology. A detailed account of last night's events. After a long pause, he straightened up again and, facing the many reporters below who had already heard about the incident, he slowly explained the events of the previous night. "Here, I offer a profound reflection on the way our department handled the situation. At the same time, I hereby announce that the arrest warrant for Spider-Woman is hereby rescinded. Furthermore, I urge Spider-Woman to cooperate with our police force to maintain public order, combat criminals, apprehend the culprits responsible for last night's chaos, and create a city of harmony and freedom." In the luxuriously decorated office of the Daily Bugle building, the owner. Fuck. Are these guys crazy? They're collaborating with a criminal who dares not reveal his true identity. This is a disgrace to the NYPD. A middle-aged man with a mustache, dressed in a suit and tie, dangling a Monty brand cigar from Cuba, heard Sheriff George's words on TV. He suddenly stood up from his comfortable executive chair and threw his expensive cigar to the ground. Just as he was feeling angry about what had just happened, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." After calming down and settling back into his executive chair, he slowly spoke. "Mr. Jameson, this is our newly typeset newspaper. Are there any changes that need to be made?" A slender secretary in a professional suit entered the office and handed Jonah Jameson a freshly printed newspaper. "Rewrite the entire report on Spider-Woman." Jonah Jameson glanced at the newspaper and said without hesitation. "But if we revise everything, we might miss today's release date." Secretary Betty Brand couldn't question her boss's decision, offering only a token suggestion. "That needs to be changed. Tell all the editors at the newspaper to quickly rewrite the story around the scandalous dealings between the police department and Spider-Woman. Make sure the public sees Spider-Woman as a heinous criminal, not a hero protecting the city. The NYPD's collaboration with them is a complete nefarious act. Oh, and have the editors come up with an eye-catching headline, ideally one that will make people want to buy the newspaper." After a brief thought, Jonah Jameson came up with a general direction for the revisions. In short, for him, the right thing to do was to continue smearing Spider-Woman. "Okay, boss, I'll do it right away." The secretary prepared to leave. "Wait, don't leave yet." At that moment, Jonah Jameson, his gaze back on the TV, suddenly changed expression and abruptly stopped the secretary from leaving. Police press conference. With Sheriff George personally rescinding the arrest warrant for Spider-Woman, every reporter present sensed this was going to be big news. However, after one reporter raised his hand and was allowed to ask a question, the room fell silent. "Sheriff George, I seem to have received some different information about what happened last night than you've given me. Perhaps you're hiding something from the citizens of this city." As the reporter spoke, George's calm expression suddenly changed. "Sorry, I won't answer that question." Before he could stop the reporter, he quickly continued, "Someone claims there weren't just 2 people with superpowers at the scene, but also one with the ability to fly in immense strength, and the police suspect this newly discovered superpower. It's the famous comic book hero, Superman." Before the reporter could finish, Chief George, his face grim, announced into the microphone, "I'm sorry, this NYPD press conference is over. Please leave in an orderly manner." Damn it. Who leaked this information? Although George had known the news wouldn't stay hidden for long, He hadn't expected reporters to find out the next day and even bring it up at the press conference. Superman? How is that possible? How could he even exist in real life? A reporter at the scene expressed doubt at the reporter's statement. Who is Superman? A Hollywood star? This person clearly had barely read comic books in his childhood. With countless reporters questioning and wondering, the scene suddenly became extremely noisy. Even the uninformed officers maintaining order began to whisper among themselves. Oh my God, look everyone, what on earth is that? As a reporter at the scene exclaimed, pointing to the distant sky, everyone's eyes involuntarily followed the direction of his finger. Is it a bird? Or a plane? Some people couldn't help but speculate. Damn, why did he show up at this time? George looked at the familiar figure in the sky, his face as ugly as it could be. Swish. The next moment, a burly figure came swiftly from the distant sky. When it reached above everyone, it stopped instantly, as if it was not affected by gravity and inertia at all. It hovered above everyone. Oh my God, he is Superman. Chapter 16, announced to the world as a god. Mom and Dad, come out and see God, not Superman. In the living room, a boy, only a few years old, was watching the television. The picture, which seemed to be shaking from the photographer's excitement, excitedly shouted to his parents. This kid, has he lost his mind to reading comics? I've told you so many times, there's no Superman or Ultraman. Hearing the boy's exclamation, his father walked into the living room with a plate of freshly washed apples and lectured his foolish son. Also, who learned this lying habit from? This is the second time you've done it. This is a serious problem. The boy's father plopped down on the sofa, admonishing his son not to lie while taking a bite of his freshly washed apple. Huh? Which company is making this new Superman movie? The special effects are pretty good, but the picture is so blurry that you can't even make out the actors' faces, and the picture is so shaky. The photographer who filmed this movie must have Parkinson's disease. He then looked at the fuzzy picture on TV with interest and commented. Dad, this is true, the boy insisted. He had never lied, not even last time. This kid, your mother really needs to discipline him. Quick, change the channel. I want to continue watching the press conference. Huh? Holy shit, this is actually the press conference? Suddenly noticing the channel hadn't changed, the father was stunned by the scene. It was the very scene of the press conference. At that moment, the entire press conference room, packed with hundreds of people, fell silent as that figure appeared. Everyone looked up at the sky, their eyes filled with disbelief at the astonishing figure. Even before this moment, some had questioned the existence of Superman. But now, a figure appeared before them, soaring into the air like a god. Its eyes, glowing red, surveyed everything below as if it were a group of ants. Filled with majesty and a terrifying aura, at that moment, almost no one dared to question it. Are you really Superman? Or a liar who deceives the world? However, there are still some brave people, especially when a group of reporters are present. When a reporter slowly spoke, his tone filled with doubt, he asked the figure in the sky if he was really Superman. What a foolish fool. Does he really think reality is as beautiful as in comics? If I had Superman's powers, I would have used them to conquer the world long ago. The next moment, all the reporters around him subconsciously stood several meters away from him, fearing that this foolish man would suffer retribution and be implicated. As expected, as he spoke with some doubt, the figure in the sky slowly turned his gaze in his direction. And the red glow in his eyes, which were already emitting a captivating red light, suddenly intensified. Swish! In an instant, a scorching heat beam pierced the void, leaving a shaped mark at the feet of the questioning reporter. If the heat beam had deviated even slightly, his legs would have been amputated. After responding to the doubt with action, the terrifying figure instantly soared into the sky, accelerating relentlessly and breaking the sound barrier. Boom! A resounding roar, like a thunderclap, nearly shattered the eardrums of everyone present. The buzzing tinnitus lasted for nearly a minute before finally subsiding. At that moment, as those around him looked toward the warrior who had dared to question him, they found him already slumped to the ground in utter fear, a wet liquid between his legs soaking the ground. It proved that he wasn't brave, but merely naive. Distant above the sky, congratulations, host, you've successfully completed the mission. Proclaim your existence to the world as a god. Reward: 500 points, and your sunlight absorption efficiency will increase 5-fold for the next month. It wasn't that Peter enjoyed flaunting his abilities, it was simply that the system had given him so much. So much so that before he'd even finished his breakfast, he'd said goodbye to Uncle Ben and Aunt May and returned to his room. Then, he flew to the press conference without stopping, completing this sudden, limited-time mission issued by the system. After all, the 500 points rewarded for completing the mission alone was 5 times the points he'd earned from completing previous missions. Not to mention the buff that lasted a full month. While this buff was only half as effective as the previous one, it was still longer lasting. With this buff that accelerated sunlight absorption, Peter even felt he could awaken all his unawakened abilities within a month. He would then truly become a godlike being without any weaknesses. Just as Peter was imagining the power he'd achieve after fully awakening all his superhuman abilities, the system's voice sounded again. As Superman Homelander, while possessing powerful abilities, you also need equipment and facilities that enhance your confidence. The following main storyline quests are now being released. As Superman, how could you not have your own unique and cool suit? Requirements: craft your own unique suit, with any materials, style, method, or participants. Rewards: rewards will be awarded based on the suit's stunning appearance. Note: a new main quest will appear only after completing this one. A new quest? And a main quest? It seems there are more main quests after completing it. Make your own suit? Isn't it like a free reward? After all, this quest has no restrictions. Even if Peter mistakenly used this hastily found outfit as a ready-made suit, he could still complete the quest instantly. However, the reward for completing the quest this way wouldn't be very generous. But it's time to make my own suit. After all, I can't just pick up a new suit every time I go out as Superman. If people knew I, a god on Earth, was just picking up other people's clothes, I'd be so embarrassed. Peter couldn't help but sigh as he received the latest quest from the system. The system's release was timely. He'd been thinking about making his own suit for a while. It's just that he only gained the ability to fly yesterday, so he hadn't had time to put it into practice yet. Chapter 17, Only 3-year-olds read comics. It was midday, the blazing sun high in the sky scorching the earth like a fireball. Inside a newsstand on a Brooklyn street in New York City, a somewhat overweight white man, seemingly just back from lunch, sat. He closed the door and placed a stack of newly arrived newspapers from the Daily Bugle in a prominent spot. Even though they're late, they're selling well. Such a simple task still left him sweating profusely. He casually wiped his face with his arm. He impatiently threw the pile of sweat heavily onto a chair. As if suddenly struck by something, he struggled to sidestep and slowly pulled a pack of cheap cigarettes from the side pocket of his shorts. Puff. Unconcerned with the possibility of his actions ending in flames, he lit the cigarette. Whew, so good. He half closed his eyes and slowly exhaled a puff of smoke, feeling as if this moment was his happiest. Young man, could you please get me a newspaper? Thank you. A hunched, gray-haired old man suddenly appeared outside the newsstand. Here, they're all right there. Take your pick. 5 cents each. Remember to pay. He raised his hand, half closed his eyes, and pointed to where the newspapers were kept. He blew another puff of smoke, filling the entire newsstand with cheap second-hand smoke. The old man struggled to straighten himself up, reached into the newspaper, and took a copy of the Daily Bugle. He then pulled a nickel from his pocket and slowly placed it on the table. Young people these days, he sighed, then sat on a sidewalk chair and slowly read the newspaper. Superman in New York? Haha, this world is really interesting. As he read the paper, a somewhat intriguing smile crossed his face. A gentle breeze rustled through the hot air, bringing a refreshing feeling. Give me a newspaper, thank you. Here, take it yourself. Remember to pay the 5 cents after you've taken it. The same process continued. However, the young man, half closed his eyes, savoring the nicotine-fueled pleasure of his cigarette, suddenly felt a chill brush his face. Even in the scorching midday heat, icy stubble instantly formed on his unshaved beard. The biting chill made him shiver, and he hurriedly opened his eyes. The next moment, the frozen cigarette dangling from his lips fell to the ground. He instantly jumped up like Tom with a burn on his butt, his body trembling. Hey, Mr. Superman. Hello, here's the newspaper you asked for, Mr. Superman, you don't have to pay, just consider it a gift from me. Young man, remember to strive for excellence in everything you do. The old man on the street had already stood up, leaving behind only these words and a hunched back. Swish. Envious of the figure disappearing into the sky, the young man wiped the non-existent sweat from his forehead. Then, he stared at the nickel embedded deeply in the stainless steel tabletop, speechless. The greatest superhero in human history, Superman, has made a surprise appearance in New York City. This is a blessing for New York City and for all of humanity. In Obadiah Stane's office in the Stark Industries building, he said, the editor of the Daily Bugle is getting better and better at coming up with eye-catching headlines. He casually tossed the Daily Bugle, which he had just read, onto his desk. Obadiah Stane went to his desk and opened a heavily encrypted file on his personal computer. Jericho missiles. Humph, Tony Stark, you truly are a genius comparable to your father. Too bad. You're just as pedantic and inflexible as your father. He casually sent the highly confidential Stark Industries document, which contained only a description of the weapons, and a pre-written letter to an unknown IP address. Obadiah Stane closed his computer and walked to the window. From his vantage point, he could take in nearly all of New York City. Superman? Tony Stark? Strength? A genius mind, HMPH. In the end, this world is ruled by capital. Whoever has the most money truly rules it. As if struck by a thought, Obadiah turned to his desk and picked up the phone. Hello, General Ross. Yes, on behalf of Stark Industries, I'm accepting your deal for specialized weapons. Don't hang up just yet. I can also offer you a new deal for the military. Haha. Then, happy cooperation. After hanging up, a sinister smile flashed across Obadiah's face. The next moment, his smile transformed into a friendly one. He looked at the blonde beauty who was about to knock at his office door and spoke slowly. Come in, Ms. Potts, you've arrived just in time. We've just received 2 large orders from the military, a total of $5 billion. I hope you can notify Tony as soon as possible. Mr. Stan, with orders like that, will Stark Industries, Pepper Potts, the president's secretary, took a brief look at the orders and felt they seemed unlikely to fulfill them. Don't worry, Ms. Potts. Don't you know Tony? He's humanity's most gifted weapons engineer. Nothing can faze him. Okay, Mr. Stan, I'll pass that on to Mr. Stark. As a secretary, Pepper's authority was limited, and being able to raise questions was the best he could do. At night, in a luxurious villa on Malibu Beach, far away in Los Angeles, Tony Stark, having just returned from a party with 2 beautiful blondes, finally put an end to his relentless life. Unable to sleep, he removed his hand from the lithe, graceful form, left the strangely scented bedroom, and descended into the villa's basement laboratory. Hey, Jarvis, let's see what new projects we have lined up, Tony called out into the air, holding a glass of fine 1992 red wine. Sir, we've just received 2 new orders from your company. I'd like to have some information available for your review. With a magnetic voice, a virtual projection instantly appeared on the laboratory table in front of Tony. This is, Tony remained casual as he looked at the 2 documents on the visual desktop. He casually tossed his valuable bottle of red wine into the trash can and then flicked through the air to open one of the documents. Recreating the super soldier serum experiment? Gamma radiation mutation? The Hulk. Tony's expression grew increasingly serious as he looked at the documents before him. Those fools in the military are just causing trouble. After a quick glance at the information, Tony felt the order seemed a bit challenging and clicked on the second one. Are you kidding me? How could Superman exist in this world? The moment he opened the second order, Tony was filled with doubt about its authenticity. Sir, this is today's media coverage of Superman, along with the original video from the press conference, and the many online photos that passers-by claim to have taken of Superman flying. As Jarvis finished speaking, a flurry of videos and blurry photos of Superman appeared on the virtual projection before him. Did Superman really just appear out of the comics? Tony still couldn't believe it. Mr. Stark, do you need to read a comic about Superman? There is a detailed introduction to the character of Superman there, which may be helpful for you to complete your order. You must be kidding. Only 3-year-olds read comics. Tony seemed to be very contemptuous of people who read comics. Warning, there is. Jarvis's warning had just sounded, but Tony's figure had disappeared into the basement. Even the most powerful artificial intelligence Jarvis was stunned for a few seconds. Initiate emergency plan, contacting Ms. Pepper Potts. Chapter 18 Tony Stark, you've been kidnapped. Antarctica, seldom visited, is perpetually covered by glaciers. Suddenly, a figure streaked across the horizon, shattering the tranquility, plummeting into the frigid ice. Inside the 100-meter-deep ice cave, Peter casually threw Tony Stark, who had been forcibly brought there, to the ground and spoke slowly. Mr. Tony Stark, I regret to inform you that you've been abducted. Ugh, Tony Stark couldn't respond to Peter at this moment, only feeling a churning in his stomach. Although Tony had once deeply yearned for the sky, hoping one day to soar freely under the blue sky with his own power, at this moment, he was just an ordinary person suffering from flight sickness. Wow, Peter watched Tony sprawled on the ground, vomiting profusely, and didn't interrupt him. After all, anyone accelerated from a standstill to more than 10 times the speed of sound would likely not fare much better. After several minutes, Tony finally vomited out everything he could. Sorry for the wait, Mr. Superman. What were you going to say? Weakly sitting on the ground, Tony looked up at the unfamiliar Superman before him, unsure why he'd brought him here. He scoffed. However, his response was a gradually crimson gaze. Fuck, are you going to kill me? Rolling awkwardly on the ground, avoiding the crimson, hot gaze, Tony stood up and launched into a barrage of curses. He vomited Tony's vomit, burning the strongly reeking vomit to ash. Peter's eyes, the red glow still lingering, stared directly at Tony's sullen expression. His voice was deep. I'm honored to inform you that you've been kidnapped. If you can't figure out your location, the next laser beam won't hit you. Okay, I surrender. Now you're the boss. Watching Peter's red eyes scan his body, finally resting on a hidden spot, Tony quickly raised his hand in surrender. So, our great Mr. Superman, why did you kidnap me here? It's not for money, is it? Tony asked cautiously, desperately hoping Peter would answer yes. After all, money, while important to him, wasn't that important. Money? How could that mean anything to me? Unfortunately, Peter certainly didn't kidnap him for money. Then what? Beauty? Fame? Power? If it's power, I could use the money to help you run for president. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blew, and Tony realized he'd been in a hurry to leave and was still wearing pajamas. Seeing the man's face still expressionless, Tony crossed his arms and continued tremblingly, I'll give you anything you want, except myself. Ahem, you're not really doing this for me. As if a thought had occurred to him, Tony suddenly felt less cold, though a certain part of him felt a tightness. I want the knowledge in your head. Hearing this, Tony finally breathed a sigh of relief. Help me build my suit, and here, my own fortress of solitude. It was a night filled with joy. Having completed his plan, Obadiah Stane drifted off to sleep, dreaming of soon taking complete control of Stark Industries. Ding-ling-ling, however, the sudden ringing of the phone interrupted his sweet dreams. He slowly stood up, took a sip of the fine red wine on the bedside table, cleared his throat, and finally answered the phone. What did you say? Tony's been kidnapped. Suppressing his excitement and trying not to burst out laughing at this moment, Obadiah exclaimed in astonishment. Okay, I'll be right there, I'm not still dreaming. He hung up, his smile instantly uncontrollable. Completely immersed in the joy of his dream coming true. Wait, I just sent my plan this afternoon, and they've already finished it tonight. Obadiah quickly sensed something was amiss. After all, he had just sent the cooperation plan to his private buyer that afternoon. How could it be completed tonight? If they had the ability, they would have stormed the presidential palace long ago. Furthermore, this completely contradicted their plan. No, I have to see for myself. The next moment, Obadiah, his smile gone, hurriedly got out of bed and rushed to Tony's luxurious villa. Meanwhile, inside the Malibu villa, countless figures in military uniforms, armed with live ammunition, surrounded the entire villa. Several fighter jets were circling the area in a blanket search. Inside the villa, countless intelligence officers in black suits and white gloves were constantly searching for any possible clues. However, they found no trace of any outsiders. Of course, this did not include the 2 magazine cover models they had taken away for questioning. Pepper, what's going on? Why did Tony suddenly disappear? A black man in an Air Force pilot's uniform suddenly burst into the villa and asked Pepper directly. Colonel Rhodes, I don't know either. I only discovered Mr. Stark's disappearance after receiving an urgent notification from Jarvis. Pepper looked pale. The incident had happened so suddenly that she hadn't even had time to put on her makeup. What's going on? Why did Tony suddenly disappear? Before the two could continue their conversation, a figure reappeared at the villa's door. Even before entering, they began shouting, seeming extremely anxious and worried. Mr. Stan, you're here, Pepper Potts, what's going on? As the CEO's assistant, why didn't you keep an eye on Tony? Obadiah demanded sharply upon entering. I'm sorry, Mr. Stan. You know Mr. Stark doesn't like me disturbing him at night. Pepper was also frustrated. Tony's playboy personality was well known. Well, now is not the time to assign blame. Finding Tony is the most important thing, Colonel James Rhodes spoke to ease the tension between the two. Jarvis, do you have any leads? Rhodes then called directly to Jarvis, hoping to obtain some specific clues. I'm sorry, Colonel Rhodes. None of the surveillance systems I have access to have captured any footage of anyone breaking into the villa. Even the satellite radar overhead has detected no trace of anyone breaking in. Mr. Stark, he just vanished. Jarvis's magnetic voice slowly rose, leaving everyone feeling unconvinced. With no video footage, and even radar showing no signs of intrusion, was Tony kidnapped by a demon? Obadiah's face suddenly darkened, as if driven mad by Tony's disappearance. Wait, could it be? Suddenly, as if a thought struck her, Pepper Potts spoke uncertainly. Chapter 19. Who said you were alone? So, you kidnapped me just for this? Tony slumped down on the ground, his face filled with disbelief. This Superman who suddenly appeared in our world must be a fool. Of course, Tony didn't dare say such words to his face, or else he'd be sliced in half by a blazing laser. Just tell me whether you'll do it or not. Peter was no fool. If he'd asked him for help, whether he'd help was one thing, and whether he'd do his best after agreeing was another. More importantly, if he did, he'd owe him a favor. Now, with just a role reversal, he had no choice but to do his best for him. Well, do I have any other choice? Tony, dressed in thin pajamas, crossed his arms, trying to keep warm, his tone filled with resignation. But everything else can be put aside. If you don't give me some warm clothes, I'll probably freeze to death. In just a few minutes, Tony's lips were turning purple from the cold. 10 minutes, with that, Peter instantly vanished. Hiss, seeing Peter leave, Tony, trembling, quickly climbed to his feet. He glanced at the entrance above the ice cave, then quickly reached the outer rock face and climbed up using both hands and feet. However, less than a minute later, Peter returned, carrying a thick down jacket and a pile of firewood. With a clatter, he placed the firewood on the ground and watched with interest as Tony, who had just climbed less than 2 meters up the rock face, climbed up the rock face. Did this guy say he'd be back in 10 minutes? Tony, unsure whether to continue climbing or descending, was filled with embarrassment. Suddenly, his footing slipped, and he slid down the rock face like a salted fish. Ahem, it was really cold just now. I'm getting up to exercise. Sitting down on the ground, Tony gave an awkward laugh. If you can climb out tonight, I'll let you go. It wasn't that Peter looked down on Tony. Without any other aid, he might never be able to climb out of here. Put it on. As he tossed the down jacket to Tony, Peter's eyes flashed with heat, instantly igniting the firewood on the ground. As the firewood burned, the temperature around them gradually rose. Huh? Tony threw on the down jacket without hesitation and plopped down beside the fire, exhaling the remaining cold air from his body. By the way, what kind of suit was that you just asked me to make for you? As the temperature rose, Tony finally began to think about what Peter needed him to do. After all, only by doing this well could he truly save his life. Have you heard of nanomedal? What? A nanomedal suit that can cover the entire body in seconds? Are you sure you're not kidding? Tony stood up in surprise at Peter's request. You want me to create a nanosuit for you right here, in this crude environment, with no materials or lab equipment, all by myself? I think you'd better just kill me. It's simply impossible. To Tony, this request was like asking an unarmed primitive to wield an AK-47, nearly impossible. Let's not talk about the lab and the equipment for now. Who told you you were alone? With these words, Peter vanished from the spot. A moment later, Peter returned. After setting down the person he was carrying, he soared into the sky again, vanishing in an instant. Ahem. Hello, I'm Tony Stark. Tony paused, gazing at the sudden appearance, before slowly greeting him. Ugh. However, his response was a violent retching sound. Ahem. You get used to it, as someone who'd been through it. Tony comforted the unfortunate man who was practically vomiting everything in his stomach, and inwardly, he almost exclaimed, yes, that's the feeling. Ahem. Hello, Mr. Tony Stark. I've heard of you before. I went to your company to seek funding for my experimental project, but was rejected because it didn't align with your company's development direction. I'm so sorry I didn't even get to meet you. Finally suppressing the urge to vomit, the man slowly stood up and extended his hand to Tony. Nevertheless, it's nice to meet you. I'm Reed Richards. Before their hands could shake, a figure appeared beside them again, catching their attention. Ugh, haha, the familiar sound of retching echoed instantly after the gray-haired old man landed, causing the two, initially somewhat surprised, to burst into laughter. In less than half an hour, Peter had made several trips back and forth in his Superman form. He had brought back several renowned Marvel scientists he knew from around the world, their research covering nearly every hot topic in science. Most of the scientists' return journeys were effortless for Peter at this point, leaving almost no trace. However, retrieving the last scientist took a bit of effort, but only slightly. Wakanda, Africa. On the surface, a primitive tribal nation, subsisting on agriculture and livestock, lay a technologically advanced, futuristic, high-tech city. Furthermore, beneath this land lay the Marvel Universe's richest and most precious mineral resource, vibranium. However, Peter wasn't here for the vibranium. Instead, he was here for a scientist in Wakanda whose intelligence rivaled Tony's. In the Wakanda Palace, King T'Chaka was discussing Wakanda's future with his subordinates. "Oh no, Your Majesty. Someone is intruding into Wakanda," a cry of alarm suddenly echoed through the previously quiet and solemn palace. "What's going on?" Boom. Just as King T'Chaka was surprised, a huge roar came from outside. "Oh no, the shield module in the southwest area has failed." In just a moment, the shield that was enough to block the missile bombardment was instantly invalidated. "What is going on?" King T'Chaka's expression was full of shock. "Report to the king, it seems to be Superman." "Oh no, he is heading towards the princess's palace." "Damn it, send someone to protect the princess." T'Chaka didn't have time to think about why Superman broke into their Wakanda. His worry about his daughter made him very anxious. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, the princess has been kidnapped." Chapter 20. You are all kidnapped. Why? Why would that Superman kidnap my daughter? Upon hearing his daughter had been kidnapped, T'Chaka was filled with anxiety. He wished he could mobilize all of Wakanda's armed forces immediately, seek out Superman, and reclaim his daughter. However, as the king of all Wakanda, he knew some decisions couldn't be made so impulsively. To mobilize Wakanda's armed forces now would undoubtedly mean declaring war on that mysterious Superman. The consequences would be unacceptable to him, and to Wakanda itself. After all, their vaunted technological prowess, their supposedly impenetrable shield, barely held out for seconds against him. "Father, what's going on? Why are we being attacked?" Just as T'Chaka had come to terms with his daughter's abduction and was pondering how to resolve the situation, his son, T'Challa, had received news of the invasion and hurried to the palace. "Don't worry, Prince T'Challa. His Majesty the King is working on a solution and will definitely rescue Princess Shuri." "What? My sister's been kidnapped?" T'Challa had only known about the invasion of Wakanda, but now he learned that his own sister had been kidnapped. "Father, who kidnapped my sister?" Although Shuri was only T'Challa's half-sister, they were very close. Upon learning of his sister's abduction, T'Challa was instantly overwhelmed with emotion. "I will assemble the guards now and personally rescue my sister." The next moment, he turned and prepared to leave. "Asshole, sit down." Just as T'Challa was about to leave the palace, the silent old King T'Chaka finally spoke. "But father," T'Challa at this moment was not yet a qualified king of Wakanda. He would become years later. His youth was more reckless and impulsive. "Well, this matter requires careful consideration." The old king stepped down from his throne, slowly walked over to T'Challa, patted his shoulder, and then took the lead, heading out of the palace. "We've never provoked that Superman, yet now he's suddenly invaded Wakanda and abducted your sister. There must be a reason we don't know." Stepping outside the palace, the old king's expression grew even more solemn as he gazed at the protective shield slowly repairing itself after a gaping hole had been torn in the sky. "Furthermore, I believe he'll return and make his demands upon us." The wise old king had already guessed the Superman's reason for kidnapping his daughter. "Father, what are you saying?" T'Challa, following behind the old king, understood immediately. Gazing at the technologically charged scene, reminiscent of a futuristic city, he instantly realized what had created Wakanda's present state. It's nothing more than some vibranium. Since Mr. Superman likes it, why not give him some if it can bring peace to Wakanda? This decision seemed to age the old king. "But, father, what if he's not satisfied?" T'Challa worried that he wouldn't be satisfied. "Then he will see that the warriors of Wakanda are fearless." At that moment, the old king's eyes were resolute, a fierce glint flickering in them, like a cheetah stalking its prey. But in an instant, the fierce aura vanished without a trace. But Wakanda never fights unprepared battles. Gazing at the half-moon hanging in the sky, the old king seemed lost in thought. Suddenly, the old king turned and addressed T'Challa behind him. "Child, I have a mission for you, but before you do, you must first accept the grace of the Lord Panther God." Over a dozen figures now filled the Antarctic ice cave. Among them were men and women, young and old. All of them, without exception, had been forcibly brought here by Peter. Some had been asleep in their beds the moment before, only to wake up here. Others were conducting experiments in their labs, yet Peter had also brought them here. Fortunately, the ice cave Peter had chosen was large enough, otherwise it wouldn't have been able to accommodate so many people. However, because this place is located in Antarctica, the temperature is constantly below zero. Some of them came without much clothing, and some even preferred to sleep naked. Of course, Peter wasn't one of those people either. He'd given them some clothes before bringing them here, out of courtesy. They were warming themselves around the single fire in the ice cave, getting to know each other. "So, why did that guy who calls himself Superman bring us here?" a pretty Asian-looking girl in thin clothing asked slowly, stretching her hands out to absorb the warmth from the fire. "Ahem, beautiful lady, let me answer this question for you." Tony's playboy nature seemed to be showing off in front of the beautiful woman. After clearing his throat and garnering everyone's attention, he finally stood up, looked down at everyone, and slowly said, "That guy brought us here to help him create?" Just as Tony was about to deliver a showy speech, a sudden, piercing sound interrupted him. Everyone couldn't help but turn to look, only to see two more figures emerging from the ice cave. This guy, why wouldn't he even spare a child, a teenage girl at that? Tony wondered why Superman had abducted Shuri, the Wakanda princess, who was vomiting furiously. After all, in Tony's opinion, she was just a teenager, completely incomparable to these grown, some even elderly scientists. Peter's figure didn't land on the ground, but instead floated in midair, his serious, yet icy gaze slowly scanning the people before him. The smartest earthling in the universe, Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards, leader of the Fantastic Four, Dr. Helen Cho, the Korean-American scientist who created the Cradle of Regeneration, Dr. Eric Selvig, a master of astronomy and energy, and lastly, Princess Shuri of Wakanda, who holds absolute authority over vibranium technology. Peter's gaze swept over the crowd, slowly naming their names. As for the other dozen or so, while not as famous, they were all world-renowned researchers. After all, completing his nanosuits and the Fortress of Solitude required more than just a few geniuses with top IQs. Appropriate assistants were also essential. Undoubtedly, you are all exceptionally gifted scientists in your respective fields, but now, suddenly, Peter paused, his eyes flashing red. Zzz! Two thermal beams instantly circled everyone, their scorching heat leaving a red-hot circular mark on the ground, encircling them all. Oh my god, no! Several people narrowly escaped being struck by the blazing thermal beams, only to retreat in time to avoid being torn apart. What cowards! Tony, observing everything, remained unfazed, completely oblivious to his initial abduction. He ceased his thermal beams, staring at the crowd with eyes still radiating a dangerous red glow, and continued slowly. "Unfortunately, you've all been kidnapped. P.S. Thanks to book friend 20180518124335311 for the tip. Thank you for your support." Chapter 21 Director, "We were robbed." Eyes radiating crimson light glared coldly at the crowd. A strong, invisible pressure nearly suffocated them. At that moment, everyone felt as if they were being watched by a god. "It seems we have no choice but to accept our fate of being kidnapped." Looking around the narrow, cold, and damp ice cave, everyone present had forced themselves to accept the reality of their abduction. After all, their captor was a Superman capable of flight and capable of firing lasers from his eyes. Mr. Superman, we will accept your request in exchange for our lives, Tony said slowly, meeting Peter's captivating gaze. "But you won't let us fulfill your already impossible request in this rudimentary environment, devoid of even experimental equipment." Tony felt that since they had been forced to accept reality, they might as well take this opportunity to make some demands, perhaps making their future living conditions more comfortable. "Well, you make a lot of sense. It seems we should renovate this place." Looking around the narrow ice cave, Peter realized that it wasn't suitable for these scientists to conduct their experiments. The next moment, he appeared before the rock face, clenching his right fist and slamming it down hard. Boom! A terrifying burst of power erupted. The immense force shook the entire icy peak. Feeling the tremors beneath their feet, everyone lost their composure. Will this place collapse? Probably not. Even Tony was now concerned about the mountain's strength. Boom. Under everyone's terrified gaze, in just a few minutes, Peter, relying on his fists, alternating between heat vision and freezing breath, quickly cleared a larger area nearby. This guy is truly brutal. Tony could sense the immense force of over 1,000 tons in each of Peter's punches. If he were struck by such a terrifying blow, he wouldn't even utter a sound. Well, if he came to Wakanda to mine, he'd definitely be a formidable opponent, Shuri, the youngest present, suddenly said, drawing everyone's attention. They really are living in a backward, impoverished African tribe? Everyone looked at the somewhat innocent little girl with sympathy. This restless night passed quickly. And as the sun rose, a new day began. In the director's office at SHIELD headquarters in Washington, D.C., besides Tony Stark, more than a dozen scientists disappeared in just one night around the world, and they vanished so silently. Not only did the surveillance footage show nothing, but even their wives didn't notice when they vanished. Slamming the document he had just finished browsing onto the table, Nick Fury asked in a low voice. Although this seems unbelievable, according to the reports from our agents, it's indeed the case. Although Nick Fury's face remained expressionless, Hill could sense that he was deeply troubled. First, a guy claiming to be Superman appeared in New York now. In just one night, over a dozen of the world's top scientists, including Tony Stark, have vanished without anyone noticing. What on earth has happened to this world? The series of events that unfolded made Nick Fury wonder if he'd traveled through time. We can put that Superman thing aside for now, but what kind of massive organization could pull off such an incredible feat? Deep in thought, Nick Fury couldn't help but suspect a vast organization was secretly orchestrating this. No, it's impossible. We wiped that organization out last century, in Nick Fury's mind. It seemed that, aside from Hydra, which they had completely crushed last century, no other organization could be so elusive. Director, there's actually a special piece of information not recorded in the data just now. Agent Hill suddenly interrupted Nick Fury's musings. What information? Nick Fury raised his head, curious. According to one of our CIA insiders, while they were searching Tony Stark's villa, they heard Tony Stark's secretary mention a theory. What theory? Nick Fury asked, intrigued. She said it's possible that the newly emerged Superman kidnapped Tony Stark. Superman kidnapped Tony Stark? For what? Was it for money? After hearing Hill's news, Nick Fury fell into deep thought again, pondering the possibility. From what I've learned, the military and Stark Industries reached 2 cooperation agreements yesterday. One concerns the military's experimental accident, and the other concerns this newly emerged Superman. Hill continued to recount his findings. The military again. They haven't even resolved the mess they caused last time, and now they're meddling in Superman's affairs again. Even the usually calm Nick Fury frowned at the mention of the military. If that's true, then it's possible that Superman kidnapped Tony Stark. Combined with this information, Nick Fury felt the probability of Superman kidnapping Tony Stark had risen to 1 in 3. After all, even with a shrewd imagination, he could already guess what kind of deal the military had reached with Stark Industries. It simply required Stark Industries, a munitions manufacturer, to produce specialized weapons capable of threatening or even completely destroying Superman. If Superman learned of this deal, it would provide ample justification for kidnapping Tony Stark. In that case, let's focus on investigating Superman's true identity. However, we must also do our utmost to search for those missing scientists. After all, if they fell into the hands of some deranged criminals, who knows how much trouble they would cause. Nick Fury never underestimated the role of any scientist. Who knew they might suddenly develop a cutting-edge technology like the super soldier serum of the last century? But director, if that's really Superman, then we might not be able to track him down. Just as Hill was about to voice his concerns, his phone began to vibrate. Just answer it here. I want to hear if there's anything big happening. Nick Fury stopped Hill from leaving to answer the phone. Hello, this is Hill? What? Say it again. Okay, I got it. I'll report to the director right away. What big thing happened? Nick Fury couldn't help but want to jinx his own bad mouth. It was just what he was thinking. Director, one of our secret labs was robbed. P.S. There's another chapter coming soon, so please wait. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22: The Challenge of Becoming a Black Panther. While Nick Fury was still furious at who had dared to rob SHIELD, Peter, far away in Antarctica, had already begun a new round of construction. The ice cave, originally only a few dozen square meters, had expanded hundreds of times under his immense power and scorching heat vision. He had hollowed out the entire ice peak, leaving it like a sprawling rat's nest. Dozens of caves connected several vast areas, each now transformed into a variety of laboratories. Peter then acquired a large amount of high-strength steel and high-tech laboratory equipment from around the world, some of which came from a secret SHIELD lab he had patronized. After handing over the advanced equipment to the professional scientists, Peter began a new round of construction. The process was simple and crude. Peter first transformed himself into a master machinist, using his heat vision to cut through the several centimeter-thick high-strength alloy steel plates. He then covered the edges of the hollowed-out areas of the mountain with blocks of high-strength alloy. Then, instantly transforming into a welder, he used his thermal vision to securely weld each piece of steel together. Peter alone was now as capable as an entire construction crew known for their insane infrastructure. As everyone watched in amazement, in less than half a day, the once humble ice cave had been completely transformed. The silvery white metal walls gave off a sense of solidity and durability. Now we don't have to worry about this place collapsing. Gazing at the metal walls, which were practically as solid as an underground fortress, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But now, we have no chance of escape. Aside from the necessary ventilation holes, the place was almost entirely covered in a silvery white, high-strength alloy, like a massive cage, completely trapping them. In that case, to get out of this damn place as quickly as possible, it seems we have no choice but to obey his demands and do our best to help him craft the suit he needs. Despite their deep reluctance, they now had no choice but to comply with Peter's demands. I hope that over the next period of time, we can work together to quickly fulfill that guy's demands and leave this place as soon as possible. Tony looked at the others, his eyes filled with determination. He had heard of some of them before, while others he had only just met today. But from this moment on, they would fight together, giving their all for their freedom. So, during this time, I hope everyone will not hold back and fully utilize their brilliant minds. It's just a nanosuit, right? If we work together, building a spaceship and flying out shouldn't be a problem. Looking at the trapped people, their faces filled with negativity to varying degrees, Tony excitedly encouraged them. Spaceship? If I had enough materials, I could build one myself. As the Princess of Wakanda, Shuri said she would have built a spaceship 2 years ago. However, nanotechnology was still a field she was deeply researching and exploring. Haha, I hope they can give me a satisfactory result soon. He slowly closed the single alloy exit at the top. The next moment, Peter soared into the sky, heading towards his home. He didn't have much time to spend with them, as vacation was almost over. Even though he had become Superman, he still had to attend classes. Meanwhile, within the Wakanda tribe in Africa, a ceremony of immense importance was underway. T'Challa, son of King T'Chaka of Wakanda, was about to be baptized with a heart-shaped grass, receiving the blessing and protection of the Panther God and awakening the power of the Black Panther. This was a day second only to the selection of a new king for Wakanda. Countless Wakandans gathered in front of the cave where the heart-shaped grass grew. Standing on the rocks surrounding a rapidly flowing waterfall, they gazed with respect and admiration at their king, the true leader who would lead them to prosperity. Fellow citizens of Wakanda, it's no secret that we deeply value peace. That's why we've remained hidden. Yesterday, invaders broke into Wakanda and abducted our princess, my only daughter. Facing all the Wakan people, the old king, standing amidst the turbulent waters, spoke slowly, his voice unable to conceal his grief over his daughter's kidnapping. This moment isn't just for my daughter, but for all of Wakanda, for every citizen of Wakanda. As he spoke, the old king's gaze grew firm. The people of Wakanda hate war, but they never fear it. If a friend arrives, we will prepare the most sumptuous feast and the most lavish welcome, and if a powerful enemy invades, he will be greeted by Wakanda's most fearless warriors, wielding their sharpest spears to pierce the enemy's heart. We, the people of Wakanda, are invincible. The old king's expression grew increasingly agitated, and finally, he suddenly raised the scepter, a symbol of power and supremacy. Wakanda forever, Wakanda forever. Instantly, a roar like a tsunami echoed throughout Wakanda. The surrounding cascading waterfalls were stirred by the roar. As the people of Wakanda enraged with indignation, the old king continued, "So, now it will be my most courageous and fearless son, T'Challa." The old king's gaze shifted to his son, who had been waiting for him. "Challenge Wakanda's most valiant warrior. If successful, he will follow the guidance of his ancestors, consume the precious heart-shaped herb, and receive the protection and blessings of the great Panther God, and succeed me as the new guardian of Wakanda, the Black Panther." The old king announced this astonishing news before all the people of Wakandan history. "Father, I will never let you down." Stepping into the flowing river, T'Challa stood before his father, his face filled with determination. "Now, I declare the challenge to begin." Woo-ha, boom boom boom. The moment the old king announced a challenge, all of Wakanda's citizens cheered excitedly, and the distinctive sound of drums began to pound, inspiring the crowds. Simultaneously, several of Wakanda's most fearless warriors, wielding sharp spears, surrounded T'Challa in the river. A warrior, wearing a menacing mask and far more massive than T'Challa, stood face to face. With a roar, the challenge began. The burly Wakandan warrior took the lead, fiercely thrusting his spear at T'Challa. Chapter 23 First day of school. A few days later, at New York's Midtown High School, with a holiday over, the once deserted campus began to bustle this morning. "Hi, Peter. Wow, haven't seen you all holiday. How come you've grown so tall?" "Maybe it's just my growth spurt." Walking through the familiar campus, only a few familiar classmates greeted him, but they were quickly surprised by how much taller Peter had grown in just one holiday. Walking past the throng, he saw a few couples eager to get close to each other after not seeing each other all holiday. Peter finally reached his locker. Oh, another silly prank. He opened his locker and looked at the two dead mice inside, feeling nothing. The next moment, he used the locker door to hide his red eyes. Why didn't the coward react? Not far away, the two pranksters observed Peter's reaction. However, the fearful scream and retreat they expected from Peter didn't materialize. He looked so calm, as if he hadn't noticed their handiwork. "Hey, did you put the thing in there?" "Yes, boss." Then why didn't he react? Who knows? He must have been scared so many times before, so he's become braver. "Let's go check it out." The two watched Peter calmly leave, then walked over, somewhat unconvinced. "Fuck, you just said you put it in there?" "Look, where's it?" They secretly opened Peter's locker, but besides a few personal items, there was no sign of their handiwork. "But I clearly put it on the bottom shelf. How could it be gone?" The scolded younger brother felt incredibly confused and wronged. To prove his innocence, he couldn't help but reach into his locker and began to feel around. It's hot." But then, a sudden scream caught the attention of every student. His hand, which had reached into the locker, withdrew instantly as if it had touched an electric switch, but even then, it still caused blisters from the burn. "This is just my own fault." Hearing the screams and jeers of his classmates behind him, Peter sighed silently and walked into the classroom. Entering, Peter found his seat according to memory and sat down. Too bad, this spot doesn't seem to get any sunlight. However, as soon as he sat down, Peter stood up again. His seat was in the back corner of the classroom, against the wall, completely cut off from sunlight. How could Peter accept this, considering he still had a buff? "Well, that one's good, right by the window." Glancing around the room, Peter quickly found a good spot. It was right in the center of the window, offering sunlight both morning and afternoon. Peter walked over without hesitation, even though it was already occupied. "Hey, Flash, we need to talk," Peter said slowly, looking at Lightning Thompson, who was chatting with other students about the football game. Thinking of his name, Peter couldn't help but think of the man who claimed to be the fastest man on Earth. "Hey, Peter Parker, why are you so eager to go home and recuperate right after school starts?" Lightning, the school bully, turned around and saw that it was the previously cowardly Peter who had interrupted his chat. His anger instantly flared, and he jumped up from his seat. "I see, you've grown taller over the holidays. No wonder you felt so confident to bother me." However, as he stood up, he realized that after just one holiday, the previously skinny and timid Peter had actually grown taller than him. And he seemed utterly fearless. "Sorry, I'm just here to trade places with you, HMPH. Don't think you can challenge me just because you've grown a few inches taller. I'm the absolute star of the school football team, Seeing that he hadn't scared off the cowardly Peter, and with his fellow underlings watching, Lightning, feeling his status challenged, didn't hesitate and delivered a powerful punch to Peter's chest. Bang! Crack! Ah! It's broken. There was a dull thud, followed by the crisp sound of a broken bone. Lightning instantly clutched his fist and cried out in pain. Hurry, get him to the infirmary, Peter said slowly to the stunned younger students around him, watching Lightning, nearly in tears from the pain. All right, we'll get him to the infirmary right away. The younger students were stunned. When had Peter Parker, the often bullied boy, become so formidable? Peter could only mentally remark, my body of steel, bullets impervious to skin, how could you possibly break it with your fists? As the younger students carried the suffering Lightning to the infirmary, Peter took his place without hesitation. He soaked up the sunlight, feeling a sudden sense of relief. Parker, you seem to have changed a lot this holiday. Behind Peter, an Asian-looking girl with black-rimmed glasses looked at him with a look of disbelief. Ding-ling-ling. As the bell rang, most of the students in the classroom took their seats. Classmates, it looks like you all had a great holiday, the first period teacher said slowly, gazing at the nearly all smiling students. However, a new semester has begun, and this semester is very important for you. For those students who don't have enough credits, remember to take advantage of this last semester to earn enough credits, otherwise you may not be able to successfully enter university. Okay, enough talk, class will begin now. Wait a minute, teacher. Just as the teacher was about to begin, a female student's voice came from the doorway. Being late on the first day of school is not a good sign, Stacy. Sorry, teacher, I won't do it next time, just this once. Go back to your seat. Gwen hurried into the classroom and headed for her seat, internally complaining, if it weren't for a bus driver getting confused early in the morning on the way to school, how could I have been late? Huh? Peter Parker? Why is he sitting here? Gwen was surprised to see that the seat behind her, which had originally belonged to Lightning, her hated classmate, was now occupied by a familiar figure. Good morning, Stacy. Good morning, Parker. Gwen greeted Peter with some hesitation. Sitting in the seat in front of Peter, she felt a strange feeling. Meanwhile, Peter, having finished greeting everyone, had already closed his eyes again, savoring the pleasure of the sunlight filing his body. Listening to a lecture? What the hell? It wasn't as important as his time spent basking in the sun. General, the Air Force and Army have assembled. Shall we attack immediately? Okay, prepare to attack. This time, we must completely destroy that green monster. Halfway through the lecture, Peter, who was enjoying the sunlight with his eyes closed, heard a voice that deeply intrigued him through his ears, his super hearing enhanced countless times. Chapter 24 Human Weapons vs. Hulk. Hundreds of kilometers from downtown New York City, in a desolate, uninhabited area, countless massive rocks towered, forming a natural stone forest in a staggered yet orderly pattern. A narrow, deep valley, like a sharp arrow, pierced the center of the forest. The scorching sun scorched the earth to a scorch brown hue. Deep within the valley, rotting bones lay exposed in the wilderness, their bodies emitting a foul stench. It was unclear whether they belonged to animals or some unfortunate individual. Within a cave, seemingly carved from the rocky walls of the gorge, sat an elderly man, Sang, with long hair and an unshaven beard, who looked as if he hadn't showered in months. He was chatting online on his laptop. Although there was no internet access in the deep valley, he had somehow managed to connect a satellite-enabled phone to his computer. Dr. Green, do you really have a way to help me? The slovenly man typed rapidly on his laptop. The low battery indicator in the lower right corner of his computer was already visible. Lizard lover, I have studied your situation carefully, and I can only say that it is incredible. It is a miracle that you can survive under such strong gamma-ray irradiation. Moreover, after being irradiated with gamma rays, the genes in your body have undergone tremendous changes. The genes of two different species have been perfectly integrated together, and this is the real reason why you turned into a monster. I have done a lot of research on biological genetic modification. It's a pity that I didn't get your current genetic sample. Otherwise, combined with the genetic medicine I made before, maybe I can solve your current troubles. Dr. Green, genetic medicine? What kind of medicine? Hearing the other party say that there is a genetic medicine that can solve his own problems, the sloppy uncle's eyes instantly revealed excitement, and his fingers typed eagerly and asked, that's a cross-species gene-binding agent that grants humans the ability to regenerate severed limbs. Dr. Green, what? Cross-species gene-binding? Have you solved the algorithm for gene decay rates? Not yet. But if I can get a sample of your current gene, I can incorporate it into the algorithm and completely uncover the secrets of human genetics. Then, we can integrate powerful genes from various animals into human genes. We humans will achieve immortality, Nobel Prize winning. Alright, we've been communicating for too long. You should find another place to hide from those who are hunting you. If you have a chance, remember to come find me in New York. I'm at Osborne Industries. As the last bit of battery on the computer ran out, the screen dimmed. Go find him, the scruffy uncle recalled the previous chat, his mind mulling over the possibility of success. Yes, go find him. Suddenly, as if making up his mind, he gathered up his computer and other belongings, and prepared to leave. Chirp. But just as he reached the cave entrance, something happened. A rapidly spinning missile roared from the distant sky, piercing the ground not far in front of him. Boom. He barely had time to make out the word Stark Industries on it, before he could even duck. A ball of fire suddenly erupted before him. The terrifying force of the impact and the intense flames ignited by the explosion instantly engulfed him. The entire cave collapsed in the violent explosion, burying him. Reporting to the general. We've hit the target. Are we returning? HMPH, an attack of this magnitude will only infuriate that guy. Several kilometers away, an elderly man in a military uniform, 3 silver stars gleaming on his shoulder badge, spoke slowly and solemnly in an attack helicopter. Refuse to return. Continue to observe the situation. Roar. With a deafening roar that reverberated for dozens of miles, a gigantic, green monster, bulging with muscle, 3 to 4 meters tall, suddenly leaped from the buried cave. Understood, General. Wait. He's still alive. Oh no. It's that monster. It's appeared. As the incredulous shouts echoed over the intercom, General Ross knew his true target. It had finally appeared. Attention everyone, air and land forces, begin combat readiness. This time, we must completely destroy that monster. I repeat, all forces, prepare to attack immediately. As General Ross gave the order, the tank and armored vehicle formations already deployed in the distance, as well as the attack helicopters and fighter jets circling nearby, all went into combat mode. Tank formations are aligned and ready to fire. Rocket artillery formations have aligned their coordinates and are ready to fire. Fighter formations are within range and ready to attack. As each formation reported their readiness to attack, General Ross's eyes instantly grew resolute, and he slowly spoke. Launch the attack. With a single command from General Ross, streams of flame erupted from the tank's massive barrels, and hundreds of rounds were unleashed in a matter of seconds. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Rockets atop the armored vehicles soared into the sky one after another. The fighter jets in the sky, like missiles, launched relentlessly at the massive green monster. In the blink of an eye, countless attacks descended, landing around the green monster. Boom, boom, boom. Incredibly violent explosions echoed through the stone forest and canyon. Boulders shattered, and the canyon walls collapsed instantly. In less than a minute, kilometers of uninhabited land were bombarded repeatedly. The once dense stone forest vanished completely. The canyon, tens of meters deep, was completely flattened by a whirlwind of rubble and dust. The ground within the target area felt as if it had been plowed over and over by a giant rake. The terrifying power of human firearms was fully demonstrated. Not only the humans, but even the ants in the anthills were likely to be implicated. Hold the attack, the general shouted, and the scene, once filled with explosions and resembling a battlefield, suddenly ceased, leaving a still, hushed silence. Almost everyone believed that under such terrifying firepower, the monster had long since been annihilated. But then, roar. With a roar even more intense and furious than before, a massive green monster leaped from the level ruins and soared into the sky. After gliding through the air for several miles, the monster ripped a nearly 10-meter deep crater in the ground, then leaped hundreds of meters with its powerful legs. Oh no. That monster's heading for the land forces. The observers in the fighter planes didn't have time to marvel at the monster's tenacity before they instantly understood its intentions. But it was too late. In just a few leaps, the green monster landed among the tank formation. Its arms, thicker than the tank barrels, grasped the barrels and lifted the tanks aloft. Then, spinning its body, it suddenly let go, letting inertia hurl the tanks directly toward the high-altitude fighter planes. Oh my god, this one didn't even hide it. Hundreds of kilometers away, a student in a quiet New York City high school classroom suddenly shouted. It instantly captured the attention of everyone in the room. including the teacher on the podium. P.S. Recommendations will begin tomorrow. Due to the current rules, books that haven't been read enough won't advance to the next recommendation. So, I implore everyone to take the time to read the latest chapters every day. If you have monthly or recommendation tickets, please vote. If you haven't, please vote. Thank you all. Kowtow, dong dong dong. Chapter 25 Gwen's Invitation. The incident in class didn't have much of an impact. It just made the other students feel that the once timid Peter Parker had become a different person after the break. Peter, closing his eyes again, continued to watch the movie in his mind. Indeed, with his focused attention, the sounds gathered in his mind through his super hearing ability formed a panoramic picture, as if he were actually there. It's fair to say it was far more advanced than even satellite radar. Humanity is defeated, what a shame, he watched as the enormous Hulk suddenly accelerated, a pig's charge, and knocked over several tanks with his shoulders. Then, with just his bare hands, he easily ripped the turrets off the tanks, leaving only the base. He then grabbed the barrels, using the entire turrets as hammers, and with a few swipes, he overturned all the surrounding tanks. Even Peter couldn't help but feel the Hulk's violence and dominance. The human army seemed powerless against him. An entire tank formation, dozens of them, were easily overturned by him. The terrifying power and intense violence overwhelmed him, leaving one breathless with awe and fascination. Even with Peter's current strength, he could do it, perhaps even more effortlessly. But Peter admitted he could never achieve the same violent aesthetics as the Hulk, whose mere presence imbued him with the power of violence. Violence is only a temporary beauty, while elegance is eternal. He watched as the Hulk completely decimated the ground troops in a matter of minutes, hurling over a dozen tanks before finally striking 2 attack helicopters. He then sprinted towards New York City. Warplanes pursued him relentlessly, the few remaining missiles whizzing towards the running Hulk. Boom boom boom. Most of the missiles were dodged by the Hulk, exploding in a dazzling ball of fire. But one missile finally darted accurately behind the Hulk, poised to impact him. As if anticipating this, the Hulk suddenly swerved to the side, grabbed the missile parallel to him, and with a swift 180-degree spin, hurled the missile directly at the relentlessly pursuing fighter jet behind him. With a thud, the fighter jet plummeted to the ground. The Hulk, using his immense leaping ability, leaped hundreds of meters, each leap covering miles, gradually escaping the human army's pursuit. Finally, he was completely lost in the jungle. Seeing the pursuit finally over, Peter stopped using his super hearing. Dr. Banner is also a brilliant scientist, but unfortunately, the current situation doesn't make it suitable for him to join my scientific team. When Peter had last kidnapped scientists from around the world, he had considered Dr. Bruce Banner. Unfortunately, by then, he had already been exposed to gamma radiation after an experimental accident, transforming into the Hulk. For the safety of Tony and the others, Peter had to abandon the idea of kidnapping Dr. Banner. In fact, Peter had already passed on many other candidates. For example, Dr. Pym, the Ant-Man, and Victor Doom, also known as the God Lord Doom. Morning classes ended quickly. By noon, Peter arrived at the school cafeteria alone. After queuing for his lunch, he found a secluded, sunlit spot and leisurely ate. "Do you mind if I sit here, Peter Parker?" Peter had barely sat down when he heard a pleasant female voice. Although it was a question, she sat down across from him without waiting for his permission. "Go ahead, Gwen Stacy." Peter knew without even glancing that the person sitting across from him was none other than Spider-Woman, Gwen. If I tell her now that I'm the Venom Spider that's been chasing her the past few days, will she just leave without a word? Peter thought with a hint of mischief. Never mind. I can't guarantee she'll leave, but she'll definitely throw her plate of food over my head without hesitation. He wouldn't let her succeed, though. "I heard you were struck by lightning and sent to the infirmary today." Gwen, sitting across from Peter, wasn't eating. Instead, she casually stirred her plate of mashed potatoes with a spoon, watching Peter with undisguised curiosity. No, he started it and accidentally hurt himself, being stared at so openly by the school's beauty. The dream girl of almost every boy, would have been timid and blushing, stammering. However, Peter, now leisurely eating, slowly and calmly answered. "You've really changed." Gwen's expression suddenly grew serious, her eyes fixed on the still calm Peter, as if trying to decipher something. "Everyone changes. I think I'm pretty good now, don't you?" Pausing his food, Peter met Gwen's gaze without fear. I think it's not bad." Under Peter's stern gaze, Gwen, The crime-fighting, justice-seeking Spider-Woman felt a touch shy. She lowered her head and began stirring her mashed potatoes again. "Peter, it seems like we haven't spoken face-to-face like this in ages, ever since my family moved away from yours when I was little." After stirring the mashed potatoes for a while, Gwen finally scooped a spoonful and slowly put it into her mouth. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before speaking slowly. I guess so," Peter continued to eat, his head lowered. As a recent time traveler, he had no say in these matters. He only knew that, in the memories he had inherited, Gwen and he could indeed be considered childhood sweethearts. Unfortunately, when he was 10, Gwen's father rose from a regular police officer to deputy sheriff, and they moved to a more secure apartment in a wealthy neighborhood. After that, they had almost no contact. It wasn't until middle school that they met again. However, Gwen became incredibly beautiful and graceful, instantly becoming the school's most popular beauty. Peter, timid and often bullied by his classmates, became taciturn. Even when he saw his childhood sweetheart again, and felt a lingering admiration for her, he dared not initiate conversation. Of course, none of this affected Peter in the slightest. He simply wondered, with his plot development, if the universe he was in was the new Universe 65 from the comics. "School just started today, so we have free time this afternoon." Gwen suddenly looked up, putting down her spoon, and, with a hint of anticipation in her eyes, she slowly invited Peter. "So, this afternoon, do you have time to come with me to the company where I'm interning? If I remember correctly, you're interning at Oscorp," Peter asked, looking up. Seeing Gwen nod gently, Peter could only think to himself, "I hope I won't be taken to the police station by security again like last time. P.S. Please bookmark and read this, and thank you for your recommendations and monthly votes. The investment is about to break 100, if you still have time, remember to invest." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.